This week gave me one plus special week where me blog get 100 million members staff. Law 2017 out of 8 million people of this country. You had even selected this 110 members. Karim Kamlo this parliament, including me. Two Nogat one metropolitan city where Nogat line that's only at Makimina me talk. Thank you, Holy Father. This week gave me special week where Bible closed down long 10th parliament and Bible look forward he go inside long 11th parliament. Namen this 10 blah walking walk, some blah walking walk. Kind criticism, kind talk, you go calm down me talk, thank you. Lord, you had to walk Lord in this parliament, he come to me blow by go new play election. Blessed Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, Speaker, Ministers, Governor, all get me play stable this parliament. Number one priority, blown blood, 7 people, but this country. MU yet put him long in. As me blood progress, Lord, this some outstanding business, Lord, this morning going up, Lord, Thursday. You yet can bless him, all leaders, now give me blood good blood tintin. Lord, some outstanding issues when me blood can deliberate and walk long in. So that me blood can save him, number one. People blow me blood, Lord, this country. Heavenly Father, as me blood go, me ask him, comfort blue, guidance blue, now blessing blue must come to this house. Now me black can talk. Also that this morning me this prayer me pray lo name blue you Jesus. One time prayer blue you had line him lo me blah. Our Father.
Petitions? No petitions? Notices?
The Prime Minister and Minister for Governmental Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an Act 2A, provide for the implementation of the shareholders' agreement between the state and the refinery holdings as the founding shareholders of the National Gold Corporation, and pursuant to which agreement the National Gold Refinery, the National Mint, the National Gold Bank, and the National Gold will be established as subsidiaries of the National Gold Corporation, a state equity corporation which will hold shares in the National Gold Corporation on behalf of the state, and the new refined gold industry registrar, regulator. The National Gold Authority will be established, and all gold mined or recovered in Papua New Guinea will be refined in the National Gold Refinery. And B, international standard gold bullion bars, legal tender investment grade gold coins and other gold products will be manufactured and minted by the National Gold Refinery and the National Mint, and national gold notes and other gold-backed instruments will be issued by the National Gold Corporation Gold Bank for the benefit of the state and for related purposes. The Prime Minister and Minister for Governmental Affairs gives notice that they shall present a bill for an Act 2A, provide for the approval and ratification of the National Gold Corporation project and shareholders agreement between the state and refinery holdings as the founding shareholders of the National Gold Corporation, and B, for related purposes. The Minister for Public Enterprises gives notice that they shall present a bill for an act to amend the Electricity Industry Act, Chapter 78, and for related purposes. The Minister for Finance and Rural Development give notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the Special Economic Zones Authority Act 2019. The Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to A, give effect to the national goals and directive principles of the Constitution in development of the economy through trade, and B, regulate domestic and international trade, and C, provide for the establishment of the National Trade Office and for related purposes. The member for Anga Provincial gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to provide for the establishment and incorporation of the innovative University of Anga and for related purposes.
Honourable members, I wish to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery of officials from the autonomous Bougainville government. On behalf of the Parliament, I extend to the visitors a warm welcome to the National Parliament. Minister Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move a motion without notice.
Explain the motion. Is leave granted? Leave granted.
Mr. Speaker, I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended that would prevent papers from being brought forward.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. Papers. Honourable members, pursuant to statute, I present the annual report for the Public Solicitor 2021. Minister for Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Parliament take note of the paper and debate be adjourned and make an order of the day for subsequent sitting.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. Mr. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I present the following report of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into processes and procedures followed by the government of Papua New Guinea into obtaining the offshore loan from the Union Bank of Switzerland and related transactions. Volume A, Volume 1, that contains the report of the Commission of Inquiry into the UBS loan. Volume 1B, list of tendered exhibitions, or exhibits, beg your pardon. Volume 2, legislations and commission procedures. Volume 3A, key documents. Volume 3B, key documents. Volume 4, expert reports. Mr. Speaker, I'll be signing the copies to present to the clerk. I now ask leave of Parliament to make a statement in connection with this report.
Is leave granted? Leave granted. Mr. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to present to this Parliament and the people of our country the Commission of Inquiry report into the UBS loan deal and related transactions. Mr. Speaker, in 2014, the O'Neill-led government obtained an Australian dollar 1.3 billion loan from the Union Bank of Switzerland to acquire a 10.1% share interest in Oilsets Limited. This decision came about after the International Petroleum Investment Company, or IPIC, retained the state share in Oilsets after obtaining an amount of Australian dollar 1.681 billion to the state in 2009 to finance the state's equity in the PNG LNG project. The UBS deal attracted so much criticism from the public, international observers, and members of parliament as the deal, despite involving huge amounts of public monies, was entered into within a very short space of time. This has caused so much controversy about the entire deal. Mr. Speaker, on 30th of April 2019, the Ombudsman Commission delivered to the Speaker of the Parliament its reports on an investigation it conducted into the UBS loan deal. The investigation and report was done by the Ombudsman Commission pursuant to its powers under the Constitution and Section 23 of the Organic Law on Ombudsman Commission. After my government was formed in 2019, one of our first agendas was to have the OSCE report on UBS loan deal tabled in Parliament to enable public scrutiny on the entire deal and allow appropriate actions on the investigation, despite myself being also listed as a leader listed in the Ombudsman report. This report was tabled and we did not hold it back. Mr. Speaker, after tabling the report, there were concerns that the report did not encompass the entirety of the conduct of individuals and entities, both domestic and international. As a result, on the 26th of June 2019, I proposed to this Parliament that a Commission of Inquiry is established to ascertain the facts surrounding the whole deal and related transactions, including all persons and entities involved in the deal and whether or not the deal followed the proper and legal processes and procedures. Accordingly, a Commission of Inquiry was established to essentially ascertain these matters. Mr. Speaker, the establishment of the Commission of Inquiry was necessitated by public concerns on improprieties in regards to the whole deal. There were conflicting narratives behind the purposes of the deal, where on the one hand, there was concerns that the deal was necessary to ensure government retained a strategic interest in Oilsets by obtaining the loan to purchase new shares in Oilsets Limited, while on the other, there were concerns that the deal was totally unnecessary for the state and a handout for Oilsets to purchase its interest in PRL 15, or better known, the Elk Antelope project in Gulf, which is today entitled as Papua LNG. Mr. Speaker, some critics even expressed concerns that the deal was necessary to bail out the state from the IPIC deal, which was argued to be a bad deal for the state. The controversies behind the purpose of the deal, together with the improprieties involved in the whole deal, gave cause for the Commission of Inquiry to be established to look into these matters. Mr. Speaker, for the record, the terms of reference of the Commission of Inquiry covered the following topics: the Oregon Minerals merger with Oilsets in 2002, the PNG LNG project, the UBS loan, the purchase of Oilsets shares, the elk antelope transaction by oil sets, the sale of oil set shares, and other related and associated matters. Mr. Speaker, after sitting for about 126 days, the Commission of Inquiry has received and analyzed over 19,000 documents, received exhibits comprising over 10,000 documents, and received evidences from over 60 witnesses, including myself and the former Prime Minister. It was a significant undertaking in any context and jurisdiction. The COI completed its investigation and compiled a report comprising 15 volumes. And I am pleased to say that the report has now laid bare the controversies surrounding the UBS loan deal and has brought to light certain central issues as to whether the UBS loan deal was done in the best interests of the state and people of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, should I, if you could excuse my indulgence, seek your indulgence rather. The report in its 15 volume is so big to be brought into Parliament. I think the Clerk of Parliament is distributing the first 2 volumes. We've got it tabled on the floor of Parliament symbolically to ensure it is tabled on the floor of Parliament. For the rest of you, 111 copies. That is 111 bundles being delivered to our office. So you can all make reference to the statements that I am making to and have a look into this entire deal in totality. Mr. Speaker, the Commission was thorough in its work. It examined in full the reason why the exchangeable bond transaction was determined and whether it fulfilled its purposes. It determined that the risks were well managed in the case of the exchangeable bond transaction, but not in the case of UBS loan. I repeat, their confusion by those who support the UBS loan that the UBS loan was necessitated by the IPIC exchangeable bond transaction. This inquiry made it absolutely clear, Mr. Speaker, and I repeat again in this case, Mr. Speaker, it determined that the risks were well managed in the case of exchangeable bond transaction that the National Alliance-led government did for us to purchase a direct stake in PNG LNG that is now benefiting the country, but not in the case of the UBS loan, where we tried to prop up share stock of a private company, and that was clearly evident in the transaction. It reviewed that the unsuccessful attempts by state entities to persuade the IPIC to give up its contractual rights to retain the oil set shares. It had a look at the state where it became apparent that the oil set shares would be lost, and therefore the need to explore opportunities for oil sets to reissue new shares to the state. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the report noted the emerging opportunities to buy into the valuable gas resources, the elk antelope in PRL 15, and the need that there was created for the state to seek financing because for the oil sets timetable on PRL 15. It examined in detail and sequenced the 15-day period within which a complex series of processes and documents were put together to arrive at a point where the UBS loan was approved by NEC and the documents executed. It also examined how the loan was novated to Kumul Petroleum Holdings Limited and eventually sold at a significant loss in 2017. Mr. Speaker, the Commission has declared that UBS loan was entirely unnecessary because it resulted in the loss of the same shares, significant financial losses to the state of in excess of 340 million Australian dollars, approximately to the tune of 902 million kina, lost opportunities, including the opportunity to establish sovereign wealth fund as intended when the PNG LNG first revenue was coming in, and a significant diversion of revenues from the Papua New Guinea LNG project once the export of LNG began in 2014. And Mr. Speaker, should I add here, for those in the know, knew that first gas returns were coming in 2014, and instead of benefiting directly from the first gas return, money was siphoned off into this crafty scheme for the purchase of Oilset's share, Oilset's 10.1% share, for indirect involvement by state in the PRL 15. Instead of us preparing money to buy direct stake in PRL 15, it was done, and Oilsets was gifted almost 20% stake in PRL 15, using state as a conduit of that transaction. Mr. Speaker, the Commission of Inquiry has made some stunning conclusions. The UBS loan had no satisfactory justification or rationale. It declared that there was no strategic interest in obtaining new Oilset shares in 2014. The failure to follow proper processes, coupled with the speed with which complex documentation was produced, meant no one within the public service understood the overcharging of the state by UBS and the risk inherent in the UBS loans. In addition to its sizable fee of $28.4 million, UBS also benefited from refinancing of the COLA loan in December 2014 and February 2016, and from the ultimate sale of the shares in September 2017. Its total overcharging amounts to Australian dollars 175 million kina, and this report recommends that this money should be repaid to the people of Papua New Guinea. Lawyers retained by the state did not advise the state properly, Mr. Speaker, on the potential conflict of interest and how to manage them. Or if they were advised, then their advice was ignored. Officers responsible for NEC policy submission and submission failed to set out a downside to the proposal and the false statement that the then treasurer agreed to the submission contents. The then Prime Minister knew that the submission was complex and lengthy, but did not provide the NEC advance notice or the real opportunity to debate the submission during the meeting. The meeting lasted less than an hour. These are vital process of democracy and good governance. Mr. Speaker, the Commission makes specific recommendations on the question of who was responsible and what remedies should be sought against them. It suffices for now.
We can do it in the dark. We can do it in the dark. It's on.
May I carry on? System's on?
No. Yeah. It's on.
All right. It suffices for now to say that those recommendations are specific and remedies are also specific. Needless to say, Mr. Speaker, the former Prime Minister has been recommended for prosecution and to be referred to the Independent Commission Against Corruption. The report also called for specific public service leaders to be referred to the Leadership Tribunal. Mr. Speaker, UBS has been named for overcharging and providing a misleading and deceptive product, and should be asked to repay the amounts overcharged, and criminal sanctions should be pursued both in Papua New Guinea and Australia. Norson and Ross, Fulbright legal firms' failure to give proper advice to the state should be further examined, and the firm banned from doing work for the state and state-owned enterprises for 5 years. And the former and current UBS and this law firm, Norson, Wright, Fulbright, for those in the legal know-how, NRFA, personnel have been named to be banned from providing services to the state or any SOEs for 5 years, or should be forever if this parliament decides. These are thieves of our people's money. Mr. Speaker, the report of the Commission of Inquiry also contains a number of recommendations, particularly on the following: amendments to the Commission of Inquiry Act to improve and enhance its powers, improvements to our public service system in keeping proper records and documentations of government businesses, prohibition of certain foreign individuals and entities from doing any work for state by reason of their conduct, amendments to the Leadership Code to enable retrospective accountability of persons under the Leadership Code, investigations against UBS and the law firm Norson Ross Fulbright on their conduct in respect of their duty of care to the state and the management of the conflict of interest situations, amendments to relevant legislations covering overseas commercial loans by government to ensure prior parliamentary approval above a defined, at a defined level, and implementation of the Sovereign Wealth Fund and its relevant functions and features. Mr. Speaker, as we approach the date of issues of rates, I wish to state on record that any government worth its word must undertake to implement the recommendations of the COI, including the pursuit of restitution on behalf of the state against the corporations involved in the UBS deal based on the findings of COI. And I repeat, any government's worth its word after the elections, or right through and after the elections, must pursue the restitution that we are seeking, or all the recommendations that COI, which was conducted at the highest level, be fully delivered in its intention, and prosecution and restitution be delivered. The People's House must ensure that those who have propensity of entering into such deals are never again given another opportunity to lead government. Interest for self and interest for collective gain of our country, losing millions of kina in this process. Mr. Speaker, let's just ask this question today. Do we have any interest in oil share today? We lost it. 900 million kina or so was lost in this transaction. Similar to Solwara 1 project, we lost money. Our nation is littered with so much losses that is the result of this executive government decision. The past government had this transaction, some of us were part of. My government's entering into transaction, any governments into the future must remember this. Parliament, on behalf of people, has every right to scrutinize any executive government transactions. And in its interest, not toya or not one kina, but millions and hundreds of millions of kina that could have been put to the Connect PNG program, or the so-called free education programs that we've been running, or the education expansion, but it was sunk into a scheme to fund a scam. It was sunk into a scheme to fund a scam. Scam of the highest order. Scam of the highest order that siphoned our people's money. Today, we have no interest in oil sets as we speak. We gifted oil sets easy access into 20% of PRL 15 at the cost of PNG money. Oil sets folded now for reasons only known to them. All the UBS executives that facilitated the transaction retired from office. But let me remind UBS, as you listen through the media that is coming on, or any international company for that matter, Papua New Guinea is not what we were in 1975. They were much better than us at that time, but there were less schemes. Today and going forward, executive government decisions stand scrutiny of the parliament, as we are scrutinizing today. And we will seek restitution for clarity. Long Papua New Guinea man merit restitution minimum. Mabla go after UBS bank. La back and back money, la Papua New Guinea la losing was not transaction. Mabla go after lucky oil sets pass finish. You kiss him 10, you kiss him PRL 15, nothing. Money la people la Papua New Guinea. Transaction income. This one executive government making finish. Now 1 plus date established this like read him good. On the 28th or 27th of February, then MD long oil sets, Peter Botton talk. Government but buy him share long oil sets. Yet, this one government is not make him yet. How am Sawe? The executive government then 6 days later on the 6th of March 2014, make him decision of buy him exactly 10.01% share of that. At the time, Peter Botton make him a statement. Peter Botton used to where you good man. You must talk out, not talk straight. You must talk out, not talk straight. You like start lumber life, you must talk out, not talk straight. Make him this decision. Cabinet Karem 6 days later with a plenty background. Maybe transaction. Oil sets you kiss him free through 20% stake plus PRL 15. At $800 or $900 million report he talk. $900 million you kiss him nothing. UBS give him money. UBS you lawyer long oil sets. UBS you lawyer long bank long oil sets that you bank long Papua New Guinea government. So this was something come up now. Papua New Guinea no I pass anymore. Mr. Prime Minister Natus, I was making wrong decision and right law members law checking me behind. I'm right. Right law parliament law checking behind. Country leave me before I talk. Cayman Island deal. Can deal ikam even no second good. May appeal to leaders. Look at this report good. Look at this report good. Now I mean no picking one month or so. Brother no remember lo yellow pangia stop upside no can cross. You know picking you. You know picking me. Our people of this country deserve big money, you may lose him. All said kiss him nothing. You mean have hold him some money, na buy him direct say no. PRL 15, yeah? Why you may go indirect na advice come to important na me plus some go talk invest in na. Definitely rubbish deal not. Today, competent inquiry. Sit down, look. Only talk and big wrong come up. UBS must back and back dinner up people of Papua New Guinea or money you see. All sets you pass finish now. Me no go name Nubla company come and set part. You kiss him free gift through now you go finish. You kiss him free gift through now you go finish. Money block PNG LNG in start lo flow lo 2015 yeah. You may sink him, divert him through Kumul Petroleum. Now this la transaction you may facilitate in this. Mr. Speaker, the People's House must ensure that the incoming government must establish, or today rather, today we will establish, not the incoming government. The incoming government must carry on to ensure that the funding that is established by the competent commission inquiry that had some of the highest qualified legal minds and judges in Australia who are facilitating this and supervised the inquiry, the finding must be fully given its conclusion in terms of prosecution and restitution. Mr. Speaker, the People's House must establish a multi-agency team comprising Treasury and Finance, Ombudsman Commission, Transparency International, ICAC, PM's Department, and Police to take up the report, take stock of its clear recommendations, and ensure that they are implemented. It must be a multi-task or sectoral team, not only one department or one agency. I repeat, Prime Minister and NEC, Treasury and Finance, Ombudsman Commission, representing integrity organizations, Ombudsman Commission, Transparency International from arm's length from us, and ICAC and Department of Justice to have a multi-task force to look into the recommendations by this UBS inquiry and then start the process of prosecution as well as restitution. Prosecution meaning koti mo lain mibla involved lo displa, long rubbish work lo mibla. The restitution meaning koti UBS, koti oil sets, koti Fulbright, lo kissing back money lo Papua New Guinea lo mibla lusim lo. Mr. Speaker, it goes without saying our state agencies such as Ombudsman Commission, the Independent Commission Against Corruption, and Police, as part of this body of task force established, are at liberty to pursue appropriate actions against the individuals and entities, both foreign and domestic, based on the report. Sufficient copies of the report will be made available to all these agencies and anyone interested in reading through this report, and they are at total liberty to invoke in their own specific laws in relation to these matters. Mr. Speaker, this inquiry reminds us of our responsibilities to maintain the core interests of our constituents in all decisions we make as leaders. This is a council where a collective mind speaks. When processes are managed in such a way that allows a minimum scrutiny of our proposals, we have a problem and loses that qualification. Sometimes those losses are irretrievable. When recommendations are pursued, it adds to the quantum of losses. Example, we already spent 30 million kina in establishing these further findings. When further recommendations are pursued, the losses are aggregated. But let me remind our country, no loss is greater than the actual loss of our people's trust and what was already lost. Today, our generation of leaders must put in place the brakes to making hasty decisions for the benefit of corporate giants and one or two people like Carlos Sivelli. Carlos Sivelli, all road led to you. All road leads to you in the transaction. The owner of PEC LNG, wherever you are, without fear or favor, through this parliament and my people's house, all road leads to you. You are not a public listed company. You're a private one-man company. You have known to have dinner with leaders of our country here in Port Moresby. All roads leads to you, Mr. Carlos Sivelli. All road leads to you, oil sets. And all road leads to UBS. And sadly, but truly, all roads lead to the member for Yalu Pangia, who as former Prime Minister had a direct hand in this. Mr. Speaker, having said this, I now present a report of the Commission inquiry into the UBS loan deal and related transactions before Parliament for tabling and consideration. It draws to a close a significant effort on the part of the government to highlight these issues and ensure that the perpetrators take responsibility Let me close by saying this is not a full stop. This is a punctuation mark in the story of truly taking back Papua New Guinea. God bless.
Member for Yalibu Pangia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Prime Minister for tabling this report. Very much a long-awaited report, and I thank him for establishing this inquiry to establish the facts, and it's quite a lengthy document that needs to be, of course, read in detail, and of course we can all debate and ensure that the public is aware of the facts that are there. Mr. Speaker, just before I talk on the UBS inquiry report, let me say that this is certainly going to most probably be the last week, and I may not have the opportunity to say thank you to all the members who have not only extended their support to me over the last 5 years, but it has been a pleasure to be in this Parliament with each and every one of you. I wish each and every one of you best of luck during the coming elections. I don't intend to be in Parliament tomorrow because I've got a visit to one of our districts in the country. But getting back to the Commission, let me say this. Mr. Speaker, the Commission has been established. It is noted in the recommendations that some of the recommendations are quite serious. But let me start by saying this. This has been one of the most expensive commissions of inquiry in the history of our country. And hopefully we've got our money's worth, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister has just stated in his statement to Parliament, he has continued to try to politicize this event from day one, Mr. Speaker. From day one. Making a running commentary even while the inquiry was sitting. So it goes to say that it can be suggested that the outcomes of some of the recommendations are very much highly politicized. But I accept the recommendations in full, Mr. Speaker, and I will subject myself to the recommendations that the report has suggested. But I can tell you that even in the report, Mr. Speaker, that the commissioners have noted that they have refused to accept some of my evidence, which I put forward after wild allegations about individuals who were convicted criminals, Mr. Speaker, convicted criminals who were witnesses in the inquiry, suggesting that they were witnesses to meetings that I have never had with anybody that has been recommended or mentioned in the inquiry. So, Mr. Speaker, I am very happy to defend myself, whether at ICAC or in the courts. So I have no issues with that, Mr. Speaker. I am responsible to the people of Papua New Guinea. I am responsible as a mandated leader. So, Mr. Speaker, on the issue about, it has been suggested on many occasions, many occasions, that this UBS deal was illegal. Well, the inquiry has not noted that this is not illegal, Mr. Speaker. It has complied with the laws of our countries, Mr. Speaker. It has complied with the laws of our country. So it goes to show that there are some weaknesses in the processing of some of these decisions that we make. And, Mr. Speaker, I have noted, Mr. Speaker, I have noted that...
Honorable Member for Yalibu, we have a point of order. Minister, what is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, with due respect, this two-volume document actually clearly states where the member for Yalibu says he accepts the facts in the report, actually states that it didn't comply with the law. So his statement is actually inconsistent with the actual findings of the report. Thank you.
Before me allow him member for Yalibu Pangia, me continue debate, me like ask him, you member of Parliament, that you will be given opportunity to debate this, the report. Yeah. So you mean not going to give him nothing, point of order, nothing, no cut him on him. You lar him, you hold him, and you, but me give him your time, you debate him this report. So, Honorable Member Yalibu Pangia, you can continue your debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just continuous interjections when one is speaking, just to distract the thought process of the person is noted. But sometimes let's respect each other. When the Prime Minister is speaking and sometimes misleading Parliament, we don't object to it. We allow him to finish, given the due respect the office deserves. But, Mr. Speaker, let's allow debates to run smoothly.
We have another point of order. Mr. Prime Minister, what's your point of order?
For Yalu Pangia needs to retract his statement on misleading Parliament. No one stands here mislead Parliament. Maybe he was standing here before misleading Parliament and is using that word out.
Honorable Prime Minister, point of order, blue in order. So, Honorable Member of Yalu Pangia, I think you must withdraw Mr. statement of misleading Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, Mdesla Totoklo withdrawing misleading Parliament, meaning that some of the statements he's making are not factual. But, these are sort of unnecessary distractions that, we leaders need to do away with. When I stand here, Mr. Speaker, I accept the responsibility that the government made a decision. I'm not running away from it. I'm not hiding somewhere. I'm here facing it. But, Mr. Speaker, there are those who are in government today who were part of that decision-making process, but goes and appears before the Commission of Inquiry cowardly denying being part of the decision. Mr. Speaker, you have to stand up. Sometimes, yes, we make decisions that are wrong, but that is the benefit of hindsight, Mr. Speaker. When you look back and all of a sudden you think that you were advised wrongly and you've taken some wrong decisions. But when you are making those decisions, you don't know. But I don't walk away from anything, Mr. Speaker. I stand and face it. And I will face our people in the coming elections to justify myself. So, Mr. Speaker, let our people be the judge of who we are. And going back to the report, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I fully accept all the recommendations. We need to go and after some of those advisors who have misled us, who have really misled us and given advice that this is the best deal for PNG. Yes, we took advice, and these are professional people, Mr. Speaker. And I agree with the recommendations that we should go after the UBS. That's what I recommended when I appeared before the Commission of Inquiry. So, Mr. Speaker, 30 million kina later, you found nothing. I know what your motives were, Mr. Speaker. I found your motives. And as Mr. Speaker, I know that many of us here, you have done an excellent job, so you will come back after the elections. And we will make sure that we are part of a government that implements this. I want to assure you that. But, Mr. Speaker, the story is not as what the Prime Minister is stating. And the conclusions of the inquiry are very, very obvious. That the government didn't breach any laws, and we are able to continue to accept that. And of course, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the incoming government, whoever it is, if we are part of that government, we will fully implement that. We are quite happy to stand before the ICAC. As I said, I'm quite happy to. They are saying that false evidence, or they're not giving proper evidence. Mr. Speaker, I will stand on my word any day against a convicted criminal. Any day. So I'm quite happy to face the courts. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much to the Prime Minister, and of course, I commend the commissioners for a job that has cost us a lot of money, but it's worth putting some of the weaknesses, like the amendments that they are suggesting in legislation about overseas borrowings. I think that is in order. We fully support that. And Mr. Speaker, I think that this saga is behind us. Let's move forward and let the agencies of government do their job, and let's go and face the people that truly deserve to elect their leaders in the coming elections. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Governor for you to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to say that even before I entered Parliament, and when we all had a look at the transaction without having the benefit of the details. I was one of those, Mr. Speaker, that formed the opinion that this was the most brilliant scam ever concocted in the history of Papua New Guinea, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I asked questions twice of the former Prime Minister. I was sitting in 2 rows below where he is sitting now, while he was sitting over there, and I asked him twice, and the answer will reflect. And both times he had different justifications as to why they proceeded with getting the UBS loan in order to finance oil search. Now, Mr. Speaker, if you read through all of this, you can see the game plan. And sometimes I wish that we would apply some of that brilliant intelligence to actually doing the right thing for our country. Nice plus saweya yumi yusimlo bagrapim country. This was a scam designed to defraud the people of Papua New Guinea. And in order to correct the former Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, suppose you may look in page 1A, 33, if you care to read the report. It states very clearly, time only asking question whether legal and administrative processes were followed regarding the loan from UBS. The answer is no. Right here. Plenty time, Miblol members are come now. We tell lies on the floor, Mr. Speaker, and we are not penalized for it. In fact, many times we get rewarded for lying. Now that needs to stop, Mr. Speaker. We just had the member for Yalibu Pangia lie. Na paper I'm talking about something here. Item M, I just read it, page 33. It also says no process was utilized. Now suppose you go back, Mr. Speaker, time me been asking question the former Prime Minister. First defense belong me talk. Asua belong Arthur Somare. He said it while he sat in the chair, and I defended Arthur Somare on the other side. That was in 2018. And me kirap na talk because the IPIC transaction, we had to go and borrow the money. That's what he said. But in actual fact, the findings in here, they said the IPIC transaction followed all processes. It's in here. Now, Mr. Speaker, Parliament na people of Papua New Guinea must look sabe na give him credit. Lo former Prime Minister, the late Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare, na National Alliance Government belongem, including Arthur Somare. What Arthur Somare did was a brilliant thing. He swapped one asset for the Papua New Guinea LNG. Now many Papua New Guineans who were young, all by non-aplo, understand Osem. When the NA government came in 2002, this was right after the financial crisis in Asia. Nobody would lend money to the PNG government. PNG government could not even borrow 50 million Australian dollars. So when the LNG project came up, the PNG government had to demonstrate that it had the money to pay for its 19% shares. Now, as a businessman, plenty time people businessman, people are using one pla asset, lokisim narpla asset. That's precisely what Arthur Somare did. That was the advice. Gave up the UBS, gave up the oil search shares at a strike price of $8.55 in order to secure the money so that we could now have this PNG LNG project, Mr. Speaker. That's what happened. All processes were followed. Today, the LNG project, where this transaction that happened under IPIC has delivered more than 12 billion kina in benefits to the people of Papua New Guinea. Now you compare that with the oil search deal. As the Prime Minister said, we gifted 20% of PRL 15 to a foreign company. People are giving more free. We paid for it. The people of Papua New Guinea paid for it, Mr. Speaker. And we got nothing out of it. And when I asked the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, that question, his response, and the Hansard will show, Mr. Speaker, he said, we had to support oil search because they're the largest employer in Papua New Guinea. And I raised a point of order while sitting over there, and I corrected him, and I said, Mr. Speaker, the largest employer in Papua New Guinea is New Britain Palm Oil, not oil search. Too many lies were told on this floor, Mr. Speaker. Too many lies were told to cabinet, and someone needs to be held accountable. We can't let this go, Mr. Speaker. In 2011, this floor threw out a legitimate prime minister. Nobody got penalized for it. No man, igolo karabus lo des last way come up. People killing pig now walking everything is okay. Fast forward to 2014. A brilliant scam came through this country. And now are we going to let people walk away again? How many times are people going to walk away? Because they're wearing nice suits, they hold a title as member so-and-so, all come to Giaman, people are giving more money, all poroblo benefit, and the people of Papua New Guinea suffer. How long do we allow this to continue? We are all highly intelligent people in this floor. The people of Papua New Guinea are not stupid. Something needs to be done. More than $3 billion was lost, Mr. Speaker. 3 billion kina. And you know, the funny thing is, when the shares were shifted across to Kumul Petroleum Holdings, we could have actually dumped those shares and not lost any money at all. It was unnecessary. Because the share price in 2014 was $8.90. We decided not to swap. So somebody had to go and save oil search, because at that time, IPIC was trying to take over oil search using those shares. Now why you going to banish him? You mean like Larimol take over? And I think this is where what the Prime Minister just said, Mr. Speaker, is very relevant. Oil search already knew that somebody was going to come and bail them out 6 days before NEC made a decision. How now private companies have got access to information, confidential information from government? How now all sabe? Papua New Guinea no sabe, but Peter Botten knew. The Oil Search Board of Directors knew. This is like one style steal you may walk in. Ordinary citizens with a gun on the street get shot for trying to rob ordinary citizens of 20 kina. This is billions. Police in around na paiti man na kilimem na try la arrest mem no gat. You miss na look yet. We should all be ashamed if we allow similar deals to pass through our government, pass through our parliament, pass through our country. Ogara man lo well sawa so you like still go to Papua New Guinea. It's so easy. Easy through here. So Mr. Speaker, me here, I want someone to pay for this. Someone must be held accountable. You mean I was threatened in 2011? Me like him, you mean threatened in 2014. I want us to fix that. Somebody needs to pay. Somebody needs to pay. And Mr. Speaker, from your chair, Usaiti Khan na Sidam Lohap in future must ensure that strict rules are complied with on this floor. You who said, remember, you come na Gyaman Lohia, you tell lies deliberately. There must be a sanction on you. How about you come na Gyaman Lohia na you may go to sit down na logutla pasin. You may just down him na. Behind by, you may lose thing. That's unacceptable. We are running our country, not a taka box. This is like no boy market. There is more integrity at the boy market than there is on this floor because we lie all the time. Same blow me blah. Inside the cabinet, one minister or prime minister should not be able to go in there and hijack everyone, sack his treasurer so he can sign the documents himself. One penalty blow desla. You like signing more agreement lo help people poro blow you na. You sack the treasurer. There are so many things wrong with it, yet you may karama people go through na bilasim na. Put in lipstick langam na you may talk it looks nice. It's very pretty. Yes, it is a very pretty scam, very elaborately constructed, but it is a scam nevertheless, Mr. Speaker. And this House has a responsibility to the people of Papua New Guinea. Lo holim pasim you usai deslaman. You police ombudsman usai. You are looking for someone to prosecute. Emya? Pepaya? You are waiting for them. I want the money that belongs to the people of Papua New Guinea returned to this country. Me asking this la floor 20% blow says lo PRL 15. You me gonna confiscate it, back him back. Only buy one the money blow me blah, you know blow yet. Enough. Enough lo this like and passing where you me remember like walking still na you me bilasim gutru kamna still. One time all poro blow you me. It needs to stop, Mr. Speaker. With that, I commend the report, and Mr. Speaker, all its recommendations must be carried by this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Immigration.
This debate, so this issue and this transaction is quite complex that most ordinary Papua New Guineans wouldn't understand. So let me try and assist them understand the key issues of this transactions. Mr. Speaker, on the 26th of March 2014, there was a negotiation going on between Total, a major French oil and gas company, top-tier company in the globe, and between Intoil over its equity or interest in PRL 15. Following those negotiations, Total and Intoil reached an agreement to purchase 40.1% of the license at an agreed price of $401 million US. That was the agreed market price at that time. At the time, Oil Search, not having any shares or any interest in that license, as it has in all the other licenses in PNG, were looking for a backdoor entry into the project, and with it to bring its other partner, Exxon. So they didn't have enough money to buy back in, and the other issue is they had no equity to exercise its rights. So they came up with a scheme to discuss with the former Prime Minister on how they can get access into that license. One of the conditions for Total to enter into the agreement was that a small percentage being held by a company called PAC LNG, which is the individual that the Prime Minister has referred to. Him and another number of people that remain in the shadows held a 22.5% of the somehow had acquired 22.5% of equity of that license. They had no ability to give effect to the project, and it was conditional for them to force out or sell out their shares. So if Total was paying 40% for 401 million, therefore those shares of 22.5% should have only been 225 million US. Through a deal through Oil Search and the former Prime Minister, they made an offer to that same company, not for 225 million US, they made an offer for 900 million US, almost 4 times its market value. So you may go sawe, time you plus an increase in price going up, you got kai man to stop, where people make commissions and they feed off the margins. So there is no rationale why the payment price or market price went up by 4 times. Oil Search, of course, did not have the money to procure those 22.5% for 900 million. It needed money. So MBX money lower or Papua New Guinea stop. Prime Minister, former Prime Minister stop. So they negotiated a scheme that we would get a loan for UBS to borrow 1.2 billion Australia or 900 million US, and we by Gimlo Oil Search buy their shares, and then they would have the money to be able to go through the back door. And then they paid for that 22.5% before the deal between Intoil and Total was sealed. And the minute that they acquired that 22.5%, they had backing rights in their mind, in their view, meaning that they could close out Total and they could take over the rest of the 40%, because under the backing rights, once you own equity, you have first right of offer. That was the plan. And they could have only have executed that plan with the assistance of an unlawful bad deal by this government. UBS was acting also for Oil Search and also acting for us. So they had a conflict of interest, a significant conflict of interest. And this is what this report discusses. They also discuss or uncovered that the amount of excessive fees that we had to pay, over 464 million. They also noted that findings of the report that the government of Papua New Guinea made a 902 million loss, close to 1 billion, money that was supposed to go to our hospitals, supposed to go to our schools, supposed to go to our health, supposed to fund medicine. This money, no got. It went out of the country, and a bunch of foreign nationals, scam artists, benefited 4 times over, became multimillionaires because we assisted them, that government at the time. Mr. Speaker, I note the comments by the former Prime Minister and member for Yalibu claiming that he wasn't given the opportunity at the tribunal to give evidence or that his evidence was rejected. Actually, Mr. Speaker, in the volume 1A, it makes reference to his evidence he gave. On page 16, it says, paragraph 3.36, the hearing of the 7th of February 2022 was the 3rd occasion of which Mr. O'Neill appeared to give oral evidence. Mr. O'Neill had produced one piece of documentary evidence to the Commission, namely a statutory declaration dated the 3rd of June 2021. During the appearance on the 7th of February 2022, Mr. O'Neill stated that he did not wish to make any changes to that previous evidence. Apparently contradicting the statement, Mr. O'Neill produced to the Commission a response which the Commission considers to be largely an assertive of new matters. In the interest of procedural fairness and in the circumstances where Mr. O'Neill has not complied with the established rules and procedures, the Commission cannot accept untested assertions into evidence. Mr. O'Neill did not present any such evidence during his oral evidence, and when he would have been capable of doing so, nor did Mr. O'Neill seek to apply to cross-examine any witness to whom he could be put such matters. So, Mr. Speaker, the statement by the member for Yarabu and Pangia to claim that he didn't have the opportunity, he did. He refused to exercise it. He bought a piece of paper, stat dec tasol, come nagim evidence.
We have a point of order. Honourable Member Yalibu.
Point of order is I don't necessarily want to disturb the minister for making his statement, but he's just again not stating the facts that he's stating the facts that he is not aware of, and what the Commission has already outlined in there quite clearly. What I referred to was very simple, that they have had a convicted witness who went in there and testified that he witnessed a meeting with a few of the people he referred to in that meeting. When I presented a statement to that particular statement by a witness, convicted witness, the Commission denied it. That's the reference that the Commission is referring me to ICAC. So, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, wait. Honourable Minister, I am still entertaining this point of order, and you will have to wait. Let me entertain his point of order first, and then I will come to your point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the debates from our members of Parliament, but we have established a commission of inquiry. They have gone through 30 million kina worth of documents here, plus. Well, that's what the inquiry costs. So now the members are trying to, especially the Minister for Immigration, or is it Justice still, I don't know, but that minister is trying to now mislead Parliament by stating facts he's not aware of. So he should, Mr. Speaker, read the statement fully before he makes such statements that he's trying to make. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister, you have another point of order. What's your point of order?
My point of order was that, firstly, if somebody has stolen 3 billion kina, then you're entitled to spend 30 million kina to chase up that 3 billion kina. Now, the second point of order that I wanted to make is Mr. O'Neill has referred not just once, but several times to a convicted criminal.
Honorable Minister, can you address him as Honorable Member for Yalibu Pangia, not Mr. O'Neill?
Okay, Honorable Member for Yalibu Pangia has made a reference to a convicted criminal continuously. We don't know who that person is. He either has to stop using the reference to a convicted criminal or name the person, because I'm trying to figure out who that is in the context of this inquiry, and I still can't figure it out.
There's only one on the other side, on parole.
Honorable members, like I said previously, I will give opportunity, because this is an important matter for the country. I will give opportunity to all of you to debate, so you hold on there, and now I will allow the Honorable Minister to continue his debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue, or the assertion, I should say, by the member for Yalibu Pangia, in relation, his claims that this transaction complied with the law. That his claims that the findings of this report, 2 volumes, never stated that it was illegal. Mr. Speaker, there is volumes of documentations and statements by the tribunal that actually says it was illegal. They were issuing documents retrospect, expediency of certificate retrospect. There is paper after paper, statement after statement that even said that it must have come to Parliament, which it never did. So, in one hand, the member for Yalibu Pangia is saying, I accept this document, I accept the facts in the document, and on the other hand, he's saying, no, I don't accept. So there appears to be some confusion on his part. The net effect, Mr. Speaker, is 900 million of public funds that belong to our people have been misused. And that money, or 900 million US, was channeled through a Singapore account, facilitated by Oil Search for its own gain, using our government and a prime minister at the time. And that money then channeled elsewhere. So the question I guess we need to know is, one, whether we can recover it. If not, then we need to focus on who we can hold accountable. That's in the UBS, that's the former Prime Minister and all those people that were architects of this scheme that resulted in 1 billion kina being lost by our people. Mr. Speaker, lastly, when an ordinary Papua New Guinean on the street goes into a Chinese store and tries to steal an oxen palm because he's hungry, he is completely assaulted and belted when that Chinese man calls some police to come and arrest him for stealing an oxen palm. And yet, at the highest levels, people can steal 900 million or billions and not a single thing happens to them. When the effect of that theft results in our mothers, our kids dying for lack of medicine, for lack of medical equipment, and yet we continue to sit here like hypocrites and talk about issues about our country and making it better. Mr. Speaker, someone needs to go to jail. And that's all. Thank you.
Honorable Member Long Kandep.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing the people of Kandep and giving me this time to our humble views on this very important report presented by the Commission of Inquiry through the Prime Minister. Through you, Speaker, Prime Minister, thank you for speeding up and establishing the Commission of Inquiry on the UBS loan to making sure that the report does come to the Parliament. I'd like to make a special comment and commend the Prime Minister on this because he himself was the Minister of Finance under the former Prime Minister, the Honorable Peter O'Neill, and having now become the Prime Minister, it is human nature that one would feel intimidated to even instigate a commission of inquiry such as this, because he would have felt very uncomfortable to inquire into something that he was part of, a cabinet that he was part of. But I salute the courage and the honesty, the sincere honesty and the courage of the Prime Minister, because if you look at it, it proves that he was a faithful Minister of Cabinet
that thought the former Prime Minister was doing something all for Papua New Guinea, but then later, seeing all the complicated papers and the loan proceedings and transactions, realized that it was not in the best interest, and therefore he said, now that I am the Prime Minister, I have a moral obligation to the people of Papua New Guinea to tell them the truth. Living by this notion that the East shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. I think that is what this Prime Minister has done, and we commend him for that. But I think it's also we must speak without hate or prejudice against any personalities on this issue. Mr. Speaker, I strongly say that we should not allow hate to drive us, nor a prejudice against somebody to drive us in driving this issue, because this is very, very important. An investigation that this Parliament and the people of Papua New Guinea must look at it in a very sincere, independent, and neutral perspective to fix the wrong. And I'd like to propose some things we can do, but I speak, Mr. Speaker, with the loftiest of desires in me for love, happiness, permanent prosperity, permanent wealth, good health and longevity in Papua New Guinea, in the people of Papua New Guinea to flourish in the lives of all Papua New Guineans. Yes, we believe in infrastructure development and all the other issues, but happiness, love, the belief that you will be permanently sustained in prosperity, that you will have food on the table, those are the very issues that matters to an individual in Papua New Guinea, and I speak with the highest of desires that such we achieve. We should look at the values, not other things. That should drive the discussion on this paper presented. I speak from on the side of the moral spectrum that hates corruption, detests abuse while in office, or the side of the argument that abhors those in authority, whether in this House or in public service or in the private sector, that see the position that they occupy as a means of enriching themselves, gratifying themselves at the suffering of the people. We hate that kind of attitude and conduct in this country. I speak from that perspective. It might not only be one person, it could be many people that could have contributed to what we have seen and what comes out of, what emanates out of this Commission of Inquiry. We hate corruption. We must hate abuse. We must detest the use of position for self-gain. We must speak from that perspective. While we love the individuals that are put into those responsible positions, the desire that must drive us is that we hate those wrong things perpetrated in those positions by those custodians that have been entrusted that noble duty of leadership. So, Mr. Speaker, I speak with this, and I do concur with the report, and I commend the speech of the Prime Minister and the report of the Commission of Inquiry with full recommendations to the House. But let me also dismiss lies and deceptions I hear time and time again. Without calling names, I dismiss those lies and deceptions. It's about time this House awakens itself to the reality that lies, deceptions, and corruption has been the enemy that we have been facing. It is not those foreigners who come into this country. It is not those businesses that we get them in. It is ourselves. We have been an enemy to ourselves by indulging in corruption, abuse, misappropriation, lies, and deceptions. This is what we must get rid of within ourselves, from within us, Mr. Speaker. This report, I like to encourage all the children of Papua New Guinea, students, learned people and professionals, private sectors, and in the public service to study this report. Whether this report is implemented effectively or not is another issue, but the knowledge and experience you'll get out of this report is one that will enlighten you. If you would like to define what corruption is, often at times I hear on the floor, on the courtrooms, that when lawyers go in, they ask the judge, and the judge said, what is corruption? And they try their best to define what corruption is. But from this House, Mr. Speaker, I like to define corruption by the findings in this Commission of Inquiry report. If you want to know what corruption is, judges, lawyers alike in private sector, citizens and young people of Papua New Guinea, if you like to learn about corruption, regardless of whether these recommendations are implemented or not, study this report. You'll find corruption in multifacets in here. Engagement of foreigners who don't know about Papua New Guinea, who don't care about us, into this country by Papua New Guineans, that's a corrupt act. Papua New Guineans who occupy positions of responsibility and yet making wrong decisions, that's a corrupt act. People are getting money and putting into escrow accounts while the people who own the money, the LNG or landowners, the people of Gulf, people of Central, people of Western Province, people of Southern Highlands, people of Hela, they suffer and die one by one, and yet the leaders responsible to look after them get the money and hide it elsewhere. That's corruption. Children of Papua New Guinea, you want to know corruption, judges and lawyers, this is corruption. Study this Commission of Inquiry report and see everything you find in there, that is the meaning of corruption. What we do or what others do or we collectively do as leaders responsible, and we do things that hurt people, that are negative, does not protect Papua New Guinea interests, and that must amount to corruption. This report clearly articulates what corruption is. But there are some things I have found in my tenure, last 3 terms, I'm making halfway to this 4th term. I've experienced some things that we must do. Things are systemic and systematic things that we must do to restructure this country. Restructure governance and democracy. This parliament itself, we must restructure to reculture. We can point fingers at one another. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I said, I speak without hate or prejudice, because even another person, you put him or her into the position, they will do the same thing as long as you got systematic and systemic structure that we are now working with does not serve the interests of Papua New Guinea. And let me say some of them. First, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea is vested with too much power. One person is vested with too much power. You might ask me, Mr. Speaker, how do you know Mr. Don Pompolia? I have experienced it, I've seen it, I know it. I've been over on the other side of the opposition leader. I'm here on this side of the parliament, and I was here on the floor of parliament for the last 15 years. Now I'm making 17, 18 years. I can tell you that the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea is more powerful than any other Prime Minister in other countries. One person is vested with so much power. I think that that power must be shared. Let's look at the laws. For instance, if the Prime Minister could terminate the treasurer who was the custodian of Papua New Guinea's economic and financial situation or financial matters in this country, that means the minister is powerless. The minister only rubber stamp. Not the Prime Minister. Therefore, if I had a cabinet, that they will sing to the tune that Prime Minister prays. There must be some power shared. That means, for example, if the minister is there in his position, the Prime Minister must be by law conduct his duties or implement his policies and instructions through the minister, not through the secretary. Not by another subservient officer, not by subordinates. The minister is responsible. The Prime Minister power to sack or not to sack. Therefore, any job that the Prime Minister wants to do must go through the minister. And the minister must be given some authority to assess within the context of policy and rules of law in the country. I have seen that. If you have a Prime Minister who is different, you might have a good time. If a Prime Minister has other ambitions in his mind or in her mind, you might have a rough time. Rough time meaning that not you as a person, but the country suffers because the decisions may not be in the best interest of countries. Sometimes decisions, sometimes the global financial situation, sometimes economic decisions, sometimes friends who come along and they push you to do something and you end up doing. And now I sympathize with the member for Yalbupangi. Now he's saying, I was given the wrong advice. At that time he was very confident the advice was not the wrong one. What's the right one? I was in the cabinet. But now he thinks that was a wrong advice. Would it be better to be wiser before the incident than to be wiser after the incident, Papua New Guineans? We have to be very mindful of the laws that guide us. The Prime Minister's power must be, somehow must be shared. Now, the second point I find is good governance The custodians of good governance and stewardship must be on the public servant. The secretary, the MD, the CEO, they must be responsible. How can they go out and just do things because the prime minister or the minister tells them to do? They're supposed to be intelligent people, intellects. That's why we select them. They're supposed to be people with integrity. They are the custodians of the state laws, the rule of law, systems and governance. How could the Secretary of Treasury then, also of the minister and other processes, assist a prime minister to implement a loan that really over 100% hurts Papua New Guinea? Now, Mr. Speaker, we did not need to wait for a commission of inquiry to come in for us to learn and open our eyes. No. You don't need a commission to give you a report or say it. You don't have to go to the court of law to advise you of what you're supposed to be doing. Right or wrong. Doing the wrong thing against the right thing or right thing against the wrong thing should be a normal, natural part of our conscience, should it not be? How come a secretary just goes and signs and does this and yes, boss, yes, sir, you're the boss, yes, sir, I'm doing it, yes, sir. What do you mean, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir? The law is there to tell you not to say yes, sir, but to say no, sir. Sorry, politician, I cannot do because the law stops me. Both of us will get jailed. You don't have to go to the court to prove it. Governance systems. We have to look at the laws and make sure public servants, they have a responsibility to the people of this country, not to the politician, not to the prime minister, not to the minister, but to Papua New Guinea and to their own families themselves. Governance systems, secretaries. Many secretaries are becoming millionaires too. They have their own companies on the side. I thought once upon a time the general orders of the public service tells us that we are not supposed to be making business when you're a public servant. But now it is norm. Palaces built, truck hire companies established. They are shareholders of many other businesses, collaborating with politicians to do business. It's hating us. We should hate that kind of conduct. It is a detestable thing. We should not be kind to this. It is something that we must hate. The three things I've seen is this house itself. This house must restructure. I'm saying it again and again, Mr. Speaker. This house, we must restructure. I remember one time, I think it was Sepukatemu with a team of people under the then Prime Minister, the late Grand Chief Magatuma Sumare. I was Deputy Prime Minister, and at that time that we did a study, and there was a study that proposed a bicameral system for parliamentary democracy in Papua New Guinea. Speaking, look at ourselves here. I'm an open member. I represent about 80,000 people. But see, the Honorable Governor Peter Ipras. Say Peter Ipras, he represents about 400,000 people in Enga. Who was bigger, greater mandate, me or the governor? The governor surely does. He represents more people than I do. There should be an upper house to reflect that. An upper house. Can't mix yourself out here. If the executive government is formed at the lower level, then they have a house supposed to have these people mandated with a bigger number of people that represent to scrutinize and to put into scrutiny what the lower house does. So like the UBS loan, for instance, if the government at that time then approved it, the upper house would have been the one buffer that would have checked it. The check system there. But what happens now? The executive government has the might and the power, financial and political. What does it do? I'm telling you from somebody who has been working on the government side as well as on the opposition side. The government has the accessible to the resources that is there and easy to just use this parliament as a rubber stamp to drive his agenda, even with that opposition side arguing and talking sense. The UBS loan, I talk sense over on the other side there, personally and openly, Mr. Speaker, but nobody heard it. Why? Because this is how we are structured. There should be a upper house that should look at the arguments presented by government and opposition and make a decision and say that's how we should go. We have to restructure ourselves. Let's look at the systems. I see I've got only 5 minutes there, Mr. Speaker. The other one is the integral human development systems. How we have been raised in our families. Me, Don Pompoli, how was I raised in my family? Did I grow up in a home that talked about honesty, talked about good ways, talked about respect,
talk about love and happiness for others, to respecting other people like I respect myself? Or was I not raised in a home like that? Or did I miss being raised in a home like this? We have to strengthen the system that leaders are elected. The Electoral Commission has a duty to play when you nominate. We have to go through a serious process of electing leaders to Parliament. Well, that hurts many of us, but let the truth be spoken. Leaders must come to this house, and leaders must become prime ministers, and leaders must stay as ministers. Those who care, those who love, those who feel it is not good to hurt other people, those who can think, those who are wiser, those who are better to think Papua New Guinea in the future, 10, 20, 30 years to come, 100 years to come. I agree with the governor of Pacific. He said this is not a marketplace. It's a leadership place. We must reflect that through the laws as to how leaders are molded and shaped into being. When the leaders that have not been characterized in those ways of integrity, you'll find problem in the office they hold. Economic management system. I was talking about sovereign wealth fund. The Honorable Peter Honorable will remember very well, and the other cabinet minister, that cabinet then can remember very well. I was saying, look, this fund's supposed to go into the sovereign wealth fund. I was part of the National Alliance government then. I was Deputy Prime Minister twice, and we established that. And the Honorable Patrick Pruitt was part of this, and many others there. We established a sovereign wealth fund, and I carried that sovereign wealth fund through to the O'Neill government. And I said, look, those funds belong to the people. They must come to a sovereign wealth fund. Economic management systems, believe in them. Create systems, not personalities. Create systems and government structures that deliver even without you. Let's think of a government system that can work without politicians. Strengthen that. Economic systems can give you the cash flow without us interfering, without us borrowing. Sustainable systems. So those things we look through, because it's time, Mr. Speaker, I'm rushing through. And strengthen the law enforcement systems, I agree. The police are now becoming screwdrivers of business people. I'll not name them. Our police are now the security officers of police people. So we have no police. Sorry, police, I'm not saying it means the police in front of me. I'm not saying to be little, but if you look at it, you compare the standard of policing in this country with others, we have fallen. We have to improve. It's not a police minister issue, but it is a whole of Parliament, Papua New Guinea culture issue we must change. Not just police. I'm talking about our law enforcement agencies as well. Like prosecution. I had Minister Immigration was talking about jailing people. Governor Isipik was talking about jailing people, yes. People who do the wrong without any hate, they have to face the rule of law and let's jail them. Not because we hate them. We jail lawbreakers not because we hate them, but because we love them, that they will change themselves. That we love our people, that these people are not a detrimental menace to society. Because if they keep on breaking the law, our people will suffer at large. So jailing is a good instrument, it's a good tool to manage our people and the welfare of our people. And finally, let me conclude by saying here that the people who have suffered because of this loan, the funds were directly paid into an escrow account, and the people of Hela lost, Southern Islands lost. The Western people, the Gulf people, the Central people, they missed out big time, the provincial governments and the people. What do you do with those people? What do you do with them? It was not money that the government wanted to give them free. It was money already agreed in formal gentlemen legal agreements. But these people, they suffered and they're still suffering. So most of them have died already. Are we going to live with a conscience in this house? Are we going to make it somebody else's duty to fix? Mr. Speaker, we have a duty. Let me say some other similar things. The motorcare port wharf thing must also be investigated to find out the wrong and correct it. The funds and the structure in which the APEC, even the gold policy that we've been talking about in the floor of Parliament, so many things started by the previous government and other people that I find they are corrupt. We have to look at the APEC that we established. Even the Pinter Sports, how much money did we spend them? So many roads that we need to clear to establish and position Papua New Guinea on the road to fighting and hating avoiding corruption. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Governor for Northern Province.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to also debate this matter. And first, I commend the government for tabling this long-awaited report. I'd also like to propose that something come out of this report. What the people of Papua New Guinea have wanted for so long
is justice. We have had many reports being tabled, inquiries being held, costing the taxpayer a lot of money. And then there's a lot of hope that something will come out of these reports. But nothing has ever come out of these reports, these inquiries. We talk about them, discuss them, become very emotional, and then nothing happens. The individuals and the entities that are named, identified, even credible evidence that is presented, nothing happens to these reports. Nothing happens to these inquiries, Mr. Speaker. Finance inquiry, SABL inquiry. There's a large, long list of these inquiries where they have cost this country so much money. Taxpayer, Kina and Toya. Nothing has happened. What's going to happen to this report? Will it follow that same path? I'm optimistic that this government will deliver. I'm part of this government, the custodian of the Take Back PNG slogan that's been utilized. And we want to make sure, as a custodian on behalf of the people of this country, that there must be tangible outcomes from this report, from this inquiry that has been carried out and that has cost us 30 million kina. If nothing is done about it, then the former Prime Minister is right in that, what's the point? What's the purpose? Why spend so much money? Something has to come out of this report, something tangible. And what the people want of this country is justice. They've been wanting that for a long time. Not piecemeal justice, but real justice, where perpetrators are taken to task, prosecuted, jailed if necessary, and not only that, but laws put in place so such things can never happen again. I want to make mention of a favorite subject matter that I've raised many times on this floor, the subject of transnational crimes. And the most dangerous criminal of all in this world, the transnational criminal. And Papua New Guinea is their best destination, or one of their best destinations. Why? They can come into this country so easily, make themselves millionaires, billionaires even, and walk away, knowing that they will never be caught or prosecuted. The United Nations Convention on Transnational Crimes 2001 was, PNG became a party to that in 2007. That means we agreed that there is such a thing as transnational crimes, crimes that cross borders, very serious crimes, crimes that basically steal from an entire nation, steal from the future of a people, very heinous crimes. We agreed to this. But as is often the case where we agree to such conventions, we don't often put in place the mechanics to deal with these matters, to ensure that we follow through. Efforts have been made. For instance, there was the creation of the Transnational Crimes Organized Unit at Bomana. I was part of that effort. Well, that organization has been defunded. Interestingly, since 2011, it doesn't function anymore. And there are many other such efforts that were undertaken, but to date, those organizations don't function. They're not protecting this economy, the interests of Papua New Guineans, current and future. So, looking back at that, what we have to do, taking something from this report that I can see immediately, is that we must look at what has happened and put in place laws so that it doesn't happen again. And not only laws, but put in place mechanisms so we empower those mechanisms so that they can aggressively and assertively protect the interests of this country 24/7, 365, as long as we're an independent country. We have become the favorite destination of economic hitmen. A term stated by a former economist, come author by the name of John Perkins. This has become famous worldwide because it talks about this type of insidious character who walks in with a briefcase and very clever ideas and then walks out with millions of kina that belong to a developing nation like Papua New Guinea. And if that continues to happen, it sends signals to the whole world that this can happen. And soon enough, like sharks drawn by blood in the water, they are zooming into Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what happened here. Actually, this is not anything serious in comparison to what has happened, continues to happen right now as you and I sit here. We don't even know what's really going on in this country. There are some even more insidious characters than those that have been named in here. And they live here and they thrive here. And they are plundering our natural resources at will and whim. They're even developing very clever laws that they present and walk through here. And without lifting a finger, they have actually recolonized our country, Mr. Speaker. We think we are independent and we wave this Papua New Guinea flag on the 16th of September every year and proclaiming that we are independent. We are not independent. These insidious characters have recolonized this country and we are not aware of it. We only get excited when something like this happens. Then we have an inquiry or we have newspaper articles that are written about it, television, radio presentations, and we all get excited and we say, what's going on? When something here? Why no come up? But some very dangerous characters, organizations and individuals live here, thrive here. And they've compromised many of our government organs. They own them. They've converted these government organs to serve their interests. They've made them mercenary organizations who no longer serve you and I, Mr. Speaker. And if we don't do anything about it, it'll only get worse. And all our dreams and hopes and aspirations that we had on the 16th of September 1975 will just fizzle out and evaporate into nothing. We will become a mafia country run by criminal organizations of all types. Mr. Speaker, I would like to suggest from this report that there must be an effort, and I want to commend the government for putting together ICAC. It's good to see that ICAC is now going to be run, managed, and funded, given the capacity to investigate such crimes. But let me say that ICAC's mandate is actually not to investigate transnational crimes. So we must be very mindful of this. Who's going to investigate transnational crimes? Is it ICAC? That's not their mandate, really, if you think about it. So what are we going to do about it? Do we go and amend the law so that ICAC can investigate transnational crimes? That mandate lies with two organizations, actually, the police and customs. But they hardly have the capacity to do this. And what little capacity that they had, they tried to develop, has been dismantled, cleverly and insidiously. So we must rebuild that function within police and customs. We must rebuild the transnational crimes investigation unit and fund it. Make it a very relevant organization. The purpose of why that organization was created was to guard against these type of characters. You need very high-level investigators and specialists to investigate this type of high-level, sophisticated crimes. They must be people who are not only well-trained but well-remunerated so that they can pursue their responsibilities without fear or favor. And in this instance, Mr. Speaker, we must put together a very credible team, just as we have very clever, insidious transnational criminals, economic hitmen and what have you, that come into this country and carry out their schemes and scams. There are also people available in this world who know how to detect them, catch them, investigate them, prosecute them. If need be, let's reach out to such people and bring them in so that we can form the necessary means by which we can have the persons named, individuals named in these reports attended to, dealt with. And if they've committed crimes, charged and prosecuted. If they've breached the leadership code, referred to the appropriate organizations to deal with that. If they've breached the Public Service Management Act and the Financial Management Act, then necessary pecuniary action taken against them as well. I note, for instance, the number of public servants that are named in here. And these public servants also knew what they were doing. They must be dealt with so that our people can get the justice that they have been yearning for, that they deserve. Significant monies have been lost. 3 billion, it said, or 900 million. Well, how are we going to recover this? We can recover this. We have entered into various conventions and treaties with countries, double tax treaties, for instance. We are a signatory to Interpol. We have access to the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. We can actually go about recovering the funds that we have lost, that have been stolen, and we can't just say we can't do it, but we must do it. Mr. Speaker. And then there must be an effort made to identify what laws have been breached so that we can put in place new laws, control measures, so that this does not happen again. And Mr. Speaker, we must ban those individuals, not for 5 years or 10 years. Why 5 years or 10 years? Ban them for life. Blacklist them so they're never allowed to come back into this country again or do business in this country. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to read a segment of the report here. It is Volume 1A, page 1A16, Section 128. Executive summary. It says, in answer to the question, who was responsible and what remedies should be sought against them, detailed findings are set out elsewhere in the report. But fundamentally, A, Mr. O'Neill should be prosecuted for giving false evidence to the Commission and referred to the Independent Commission Against Corruption. B, Mr. O'Neill is centrally responsible for the UBS loan. Mr. Velle was indispensable in assisting him in that endeavor. Each should be referred to the Leadership Tribunal. C, UBS is solely responsible for overcharging and any misleading or deceptive conduct. They should be asked to repay the amounts overcharged, and both Papua New Guinea and Australian authorities should consider whether civil or criminal sanctions should be sought. I don't think we should consider. We should just do this. Let's set an example. UBS should be banned from doing work for the state or any state-owned enterprises for 10 years. 10 years? Why 10 years? Ban them forever. Then it refers to the law firm. NRFA's obstruction of the Commission should be subject of disciplinary investigation in Australia. In fact, what we should say is those lawyers responsible, they should be prosecuted. They are economic hitmen. They have committed crimes. In fact, they should never be allowed to practice law. We should make that suggestion to Australia. I'm sure they are taking this up very seriously. Their failure to give proper advice to the state should be further examined, and the firm should be banned from doing work for the state and any other state-owned enterprises for 5 years. Again, 5 years. Why 5 years? 10 years. Ban them for life. This was an effort by a predatory group of companies and organizations and individuals that took advantage of us. But I agree with Member for Kandap, Don Pollier. We are the ones standing at the gates. We are the ones at the doorways, letting them in. We should also be responsible. Hold ourselves accountable. Do a self-audit. My goodness, if all of us have to go to jail, why not? Maybe that's the best gift we can give to the people of this country for failing them as guardians of the gates of this economy. It continues, the following current or former UBS or NRFA personnel should be banned from doing work for the state or any state-owned enterprises in their capacity or as employed by an entity for 5 years. Again, forget 5 years. Let's say for life. And they've named them here. Patrick Paddy Gilak, Mitchell Turner, Anthony Latimer, Stephen Moe, Vittorio Casamento. Classic examples of transnational criminals, I would say. The Commission makes a number of recommendations to ensure the UBS loan is not repeated. It also recommends the long-promised establishment of the Sovereign Wealth Fund be delayed no longer. Its establishment and endowment is not only vital for the welfare of the state and its people, but will be important evidence for foreign investors, along with the new ICAC and the ongoing role of the Ombudsman Commission, that sovereign risk from corruption and failure to follow mandated government processes is now being properly addressed. Mr. Speaker, these reports, I do commend those who carried out this inquiry. It's a very thorough job. We must commend them for this effort. They were very diligent. I think it's 30 million kina well spent. But to ensure this, we must follow through with the recommendations made here. We must. And we must do so aggressively and assertively. We must not let this become another inquiry that collects dust, is swept under the carpet, forgotten about. etc., like the SABL inquiry, for example. But we must do something about this. Many transnational criminals will be sent the right signals by us as a country that demonstrates to our people and to them that we are no longer open for business for them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Governor for Gulf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to also say a few words on this report. A report that is damning, a damning indictment, and shameful evidence of abuse of executive power of the highest order. Mr. Speaker, I fully concur with the views expressed previously, especially by Honorable Don Pompoli. We must fetter the powers of a Prime Minister, especially after the appointment of ministers, when ministers within their ministerial jurisdictions offer views. It must be taken seriously. Ministers must never be sacked because they differ in view, in opinion, in NEC, or in discussions pertinent to the roles and responsibilities that the Prime Minister, through the ministerial determination, assigns his powers to them. Our Prime Minister, under our system of government, is actually presidential in the powers he holds. I fully concur with that, and it is up to us what is reasonable, what powers can be put, so that ministers are allowed to fully function, that secretaries don't report to prime ministers or don't report to other ministers, they report directly to their minister. We must stop this practice. That's what this report says. It indicates that the systems of law and order and governance has broken down. It broke down at the time. Have we done anything about it? It is up to us to do it. What did it cost? It cost delays in revenues to the people of Papua New Guinea for 5 years. It made us pay back over 900 million kina that we should never have spent. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I speak as the person who brought value in Oregon minerals. That Semekere and his cabinet decided to put into oil search a deal which I thought at the time was not the right deal, where a company, it's just a Tukina company with 7 or 8 people in Sydney, somehow managed to swallow up a company listed on the stock exchange, which was 3 or 4 times the size of Oil Search. It's a shameful behavior. And it started from there. And we have allowed corporate entities to walk in through our doors, from the office of the Prime Minister, to ministers, to secretaries, without really seeing what they are up to. Where expensive, sophisticated schemes and scams are allowed without proper checks, in haste. Sometimes we call it national interest, when in fact it is not. Personal pecuniary interests. Elk and antelope resources lie in the Gulf province. It's not been developed. And yet, Why did we have the audacity to do a transaction that was totally unrelated to the development of that resource, to us owning that resource directly? What is the answer you will give to me? That you paid money from the independent state of Papua New Guinea not to buy it directly, but to buy it for a foreign entity. Shame on you. The people of Gulf didn't benefit from this. You ended up delaying payments of revenues to the people of Western Province, people of Hela, Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Vela, to your own people of Southern Islands and your own people of Central Province. How dare did you do that? When we came into government, at my haste, I told you, sell off the shares. They got nothing to do with the development of El Cantolo. They got nothing to do with PNG LNG. This was an exercise in which it also had nothing to do with OPIC. The answer lies somewhere. The answer lies in us tightening up the systems, in looking at this report and review it properly so that we can tighten up the system. The biggest indictment is in what Honorable Governor for East Sepik read. What process or procedures followed? The answer is no. No meaning what? No process in NEC was followed. No process in Parliament was followed. Nothing was followed. That's a damning indictment. And this should be a lesson. The only duty this House has, Deputy Speaker, is to adopt the report, but to vary the recommendations so that we don't allow foreigners to come in and put schemes and scams through our system of government and allow us to be slaves. Deputy Speaker, I commend the Prime Minister for giving the terms of reference, and I see from these two reports before me there are, how many other, 13 other volumes that the Commission has done its work very comprehensively. It's worth the amount of money that's been spent on it. And also, more importantly, that I urge you, before we go to the elections, to start the process. We adopt this report, you start the process of recovery of funds that UBS has stolen from the people of Papua New Guinea. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, me too me like kisim this time long debate on this Commission of Inquiry law UBS loan. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this UBS loan is a much talked about loan that has been debated over the years, and report now I'm come out finish. Na imi o kata wok lo debate lo report na. Planti lo imi wok lo sing out lo floor of Parliament, pointing fingers here and there, targeting one person maybe. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, no, I want to take the cue from the Governor for Oro. We have had many commission of inquiries conducted in our country. To date, you tell me to date, how many of those commission of inquiry reports and recommendations have been implemented? How many of those reports or recommendations have been implemented? As far as I know, none. None of those commission of inquiry reports and recommendations have been implemented. And you ask me, is it waste of money? I say, yes, it's a waste of money to conduct in this commission of inquiries. It's a waste of money. Many commission of inquiries are collecting dust. Commission of inquiry into the finance is collecting dust. We are all thinking here that our former Prime Minister is culpable of his actions, of this UBS loan. You have to be very careful. Where does the crime start? If you think that the UBS loan was not good and was not right, was illegal, it starts in the cabinet. Who were the cabinet ministers at that time? Who were the cabinet ministers? You had the opportunity to stop it. If you think that it was wrong, don't come to the floor of parliament and start debating and pointing fingers at one person. Everyone who were involved in approving this loan is equally culpable, if there is any culpability in this report. We have to be very careful where we are pointing fingers. We might be pointing one finger and four fingers are pointing back at us, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We had to, if we thought that at that time, at that material time, the loan was wrong, then do it in the cabinet, stop it in the cabinet, or resign as a minister. And I congratulate Honorable Don Pule, who resigned as a treasurer at that time. Why didn't everybody else resign? If you thought that it was wrong, stop pointing fingers at one person. Who signed? Who signed the instrument? Ask those questions. It's there in the report. If there are evidence, it's there in the report. And I'm not here to debate on this report. I'm here to tell us that we've had so many commission of inquiries. We come here and we debate and we point fingers at each other, but those commission of inquiries are not implemented. What is wrong in our country is enforcement. Only yesterday, Prime Minister was talking about 113 laws that he has passed in his time in 3 years. That's the only thing he has achieved. But what is wrong with us in this country? It's not about how many laws that we can pass. It's about the implementation of those laws. Enforcement, that's lacking in this country. The guns report is collecting dust. There are recommendations in those guns report. There's a commission of inquiry. Why aren't we bringing those commission of inquiries and implementing them? We are still waiting for the 14 days audit report for first initial 24 million kina for COVID funds from our good then Minister for Police, Brian Kramer, Minister for Justice, now Minister for Immigrations. He's finished all the ministries. We are still waiting for that report, audit report. 14 days I will provide. Where is that 14 days report of the 24 million? Where is the audit report on the 6.7 billion on the COVID funds? For goodness sake, stop diverting attention, trying to debate because you want to get political point scoring here. Let's be very, very careful. I think it's about time we remove the leadership code and subject every leader in this country, same as the citizens, to the criminal code. We have to remove the leadership code. We are hiding under the leadership code. All of us seated here. It's high time We remove the leadership code and subject every one of us, including our citizens, to the criminal code. Na bayi mi lukim. Nuko di me blame me to go come na. Sambla li mi height na stop. Let's be realistic here. Stop pointing fingers. Minister for Immigration, Minister for Police, Minister for Justice. Where's your audit, 14 days audit report on the 24 million COVID funds? Where's the 6.7 billion report? And if you're talking about the scam, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
We have a point of order. Minister for Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I note the comments that it appears that the opposition leader is running around the issue and avoiding the main issue of discussion of the 900 million loss. But anyway, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the 14-day report or the COVID report, it was presented. There was a media press statement with the Prime Minister's office. On the 6 billion, it's in the national budget. How the COVID funds were spent is actually in the budget paper that was tabled. There was a copy was given to you. Mr. Speaker, just the one point. Well, I note that the opposition leader keeps talking about everyone is to blame. Let me read his statement. He said in 2014, on top of the addition to the above bad decisions, the Prime Minister then,
Honourable Minister,
unilaterally decided to commit the people of Papua New Guinea. He himself said it was the former Prime Minister. He said that. It was the former Prime Minister unilaterally. Dr. Blongem.
Honourable Minister, if you want to use the point of order to do explanation, I will not allow for it. I rule your point of order out of order. Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. For the first time you have ruled in my favor. Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm talking about facts here. Fact. I'm sticking to the debate. I'm debating about the report. I'm talking about, let me put it this way. There is a scam about to take place in this country. You want me to tell you the scam? I will tell you the scam. There is a scam about to take place in this country. We have authorized one Tukina company to do gold mint and gold bullion in this country. That's a scam. That's a scam. You want a scam? We are selling our national asset, our legal tender, to a Tukina company. That's a scam. That's a scam in the biggest magnitude. Gold is not. You go to any country in the world, they will never allow a Tukina company to come and mint gold in their country. They will do it themselves. That's a scam taking place. What about you? What's happening here? The ministers, are you putting a stop to that? That's a legal tender. If you are talking about scam, and I'm talking about what we are doing in cabinet, we are not stopping it.
Speaker, with due respect,
your point of order.
Can we stick to the debate? The UBS inquiry. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, thank you for your point of order. Honourable Opposition Leader, I will allow you to continue. Stick to the debate that we are debating.
The debate is talking about the scam. And one of the scam is also in the agriculture sector. Biggest scam in the agriculture sector.
Honourable Minister,
I am cleaning up my department and I will continue to do that. And I don't expect the opposition leader to tell me what to do. Tell him to debate on the issue. Because when the former Prime Minister was saying, he said one word and I was trying to find out, he said a criminal. We do have a criminal in this house. We have a former convicted criminal being pardoned and in this house. Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think you have to ask him to withdraw that statement. I want you to ask him to withdraw.
Honourable Minister, I'll concur with the opposition leader. I will ask you to withdraw that.
And Pilim Pentumas, Mirausimbek.
Honourable Leader of Opposition.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm not a convicted criminal. I have done the honest thing in this country that you have never done in your life. I saved 360,000 lives on Bougainville. You have never done. What's your track record? I went to jail for saving 360,000 lives on Bougainville. I didn't rape a woman, or I didn't steal from the people of Maprik like you are doing from the Department of Agriculture.
Honourable,
I want you to take that side.
Order.
I am not a convicted criminal.
Order.
I'm a hero in this country.
Order. Honorable Opposition Leader.
You are not.
Order.
You are just a thief sitting in Parliament.
Order. Order.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to...
Opposition Leader, you have asked me to ask the Honorable Minister to withdraw the statement. He did withdraw as I've requested for. And then
thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Explain and justify yourself that I would not allow, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I have done the honest thing for the love of my country. I sacrificed my life.
Honorable Opposition Leader,
we have
another.
Want to tell this guy.
We have another point of order. Minister for National Planning, what's your point of order?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think fairly, when Agriculture Minister was asked to retract his comment, he did so. If we can ask the opposition leader to retract what he said about stealing from the people of Maprik. That's a very strong statement to make, so can you retract that as well? Thank you.
Honorable Minister, your point of order is in order. Honorable Opposition Leader, I would like to ask you to withdraw that statement.
Thank you. I withdraw my statement. But let's be careful on, recognizing leaders. I'm not a convicted criminal, and I want to make that and place that on record. I went to jail for the love of my country.
Names mentioned, and the leader wasn't, there was no implied or he wasn't named, to be fair, and I think the member for Maprik has withdrawn that statement. So I don't think it's fair on the opposition leader to think that it's referred to him only. So I just want to ask you to let him know his name was not mentioned. It mustn't be on answer that it's referring to him. He has withdrawn the name labeling or name tagging. So the opposition leader shouldn't go on thinking that it was directly made reference to him. Thank you very much.
Opposition Leader, I think I've asked you already to refrain from explaining on that, and you did. So may you please continue? You have only 8 minutes to go.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's good for us to debate issues, but we need to be very careful and how we label each other on the floor of Parliament. We have to be really, really careful. What I'm basically trying to say here is this. If there was any culpability in this report, those ministers who were in that cabinet at that time are equally culpable. They had an opportunity to stop this loan from proceeding. It was approved in cabinet. Somebody signed on the instrument, section 61 or 63, whatever you call it. Somebody did sign off on it. Who signed it? Whoever signed it is also equally culpable. So we cannot come here and debate. If we have opportunity to stop it in cabinet, stop it. If the Prime Minister is not listening to all of you, then resign in en masse to demonstrate your leadership. Not to come here and complain, or not after you have already participated in the crime, and you come out and you start to complain. I resigned as a cabinet minister in the Somali government because I thought that something was happening was not right. I resigned. And that's on record. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the only solution to all these things is let's seriously look at completely removing the leadership code in this country. We completely remove the leadership code because we leaders are hiding under the leadership code. Subject everyone, including all of us seated here with our citizens, to the criminal code. So that when the crime is about to be committed or is being committed, police can arrest the guy anytime instead of us waiting for Ombudsman Commission to investigate. That's the only way to go. There's no other way. Otherwise, please, Mr. Deputy Speaker, let's stop pointing finger. If it's a cabinet decision...
Prime Minister, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and thank you again for accepting the point of order. I just want to inform this House, there's an inference that the criminal code is not applying right now to leaders. Far from it, the criminal code still applies to leaders as we stand. The criminal code is always active against a leader otherwise. So the opposite leader needs to rephrase his statement. The leadership code doesn't suppress criminal code from performing. I'm no lawyer, but ask the learned counsel at the back. He will, learned lawyer at the back. He will affirm that at every stage, criminal code is always active. The leadership code doesn't stop criminal code from not performing. It's about those who are supposed to prosecute or initiate prosecution like the police to be at work. Just because it hasn't worked in the past doesn't mean that the criminal code hasn't been relevant to our nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister, your point of order is in order. Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Whilst I understand where Prime Minister's point of order is coming from, what I'm saying is that I think it would be best to remove the leadership code. That's the best thing to do. Let's subject everyone, including the leaders in this floor of Parliament, to the criminal code. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Esala.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I too wish to register my views in respect to this very important debate. But at the outset, let me commend the initiative to undertake this commission of inquiry, and also to commend the commissioners for a very comprehensive and detailed report that is now before this Honourable House. I want to approach this debate from a different point of view. I want to refer to the Commission's recommendations, especially at Chapter 15, on the essential question of the lawfulness of the UBS loan. Yes, I hear the debate that emanated. There's some lawyers or lawyerly views. But look at the Commission's recommendation here. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, at page 29, you will see an outline of what I'm referring to. There it speaks about the Parliament's role. There it speaks about the need for a working party within the Parliament or parliamentary committee. It speaks about the need to amend the Constitution, especially in Part 2, Division 2 of the Constitution by way of an organic law. But just before that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and with the greatest respect, I wish to quote, and it says that the Commission recommends the following questions be referred to the Supreme Court under Section 19(1) of the Constitution. I would like to debate that this afternoon that this House, Honourable House, can send a very clear picture or signal to our people that we want action by insisting that Section 19 authorities make direct instructions to the Attorney General immediately for this Supreme Court reference to be filed. Who are the authorities, Mr. Deputy Speaker? The Speaker of Parliament, the Prime Minister, the Attorney General himself, the opposition leader. And why I say this is because all the other recommended steps and actions may not be practicable. We are already at the very tail end of our term. But a reference being filed will survive the elapse of the term of this Parliament. That's the first point. Because a reference will clearly establish whether the UBS loan was lawful or unlawful. I know the member for Medan and our minister will jump up very soon. But he need not do that, because you just have to backtrack to 1.69 at the top of the same page, and you will see the inconsistency that has assisted this decision-making to the point where we are now. And also the very problem that we are now debating and discussing. You know, we point fingers, but I'm worried because this commission has actually found that the state practice since independence has favored the view that prior approval of Parliament is not necessary. And how many agreements, loan agreements, has this Honourable House approved in the short term that you were in government? Let's be very careful. Let's not play the blame game. Because here the commission is saying, we've heard from eminent lawyers, including some very distinguished lawyers on the other side. They had the evidence of the former treasurer, the two treasurers, former treasurers. And the view was that Parliament must approve loans prior to that loan being taken. But there was a contrary view, an opposite view, which was the view advanced by the former Prime Minister and the Secretary Vele, and the state solicitor of this country. I hear what the opposition leader is saying about culpability, blame game. But the Commission of Inquiry Act, under which this investigation was conducted, is not about culpability. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Speaker, sorry, not my brother there, Sam. The question about who is to be blamed is not the issue here. What we have before us is work. And that's the statement I was waiting to hear from our Honorable Prime Minister. What steps are we going to take now? We are going to the elections. We are all sick and tired of corruption. We are all sick and tired of blaming one another and institutions that are failing us. Because as the opposition leader was saying, this report must now be read together with the Ombudsman Commission report. You read the opening chapters and it says this was triggered by the Ombudsman Commission report on the same subject. There were some findings of guilt. So I was waiting for someone to say what has happened to that report. This report does not in any way undermine or displace the commission conducted, the investigation conducted by the Ombudsman Commission. This is why I commend this report on the basis that very clear direction is being given. And yes, I hear the Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister making assurance to our people that which government comes in after these 2024 national elections must be committed to reform, must be committed to action, must be committed to passing laws and prosecuting also. That there must be instruction given to the Solicitor General right now for recovery action. Yes, the word is restitution. We don't need another act of parliament for that. All it takes is an instruction from the Attorney General. I can't see the Attorney General here. Where is he? Mr. Deputy Speaker. Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon, Mr. Speaker. These are actions that can be done immediately. Not about blaming one another, because when we blame one another, we are abusing this report that does not say anything about who is wrong and who is right. It doesn't. But the Ombudsman Commission's jurisdictions are clearly defined so that they can find who is wrong and what action should be taken against them. You see, in the end, it says that some people need now be referred to another leadership tribunal, so we keep going in the same old circles. We shouldn't. What about in 2005, Mr. Speaker? This Honorable House passed what they call the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act. What about the laws that we passed to curb transnational crimes? The point is to be made that we have laws. We have reciprocating arrangements between jurisdictions like Australia. But it's not happening. There is no willpower to do it. Therefore, my contribution to this debate today is to veer away, to steer us away from the blame game. Because if what I'm reading is right, that since independence, the practice has been to go ahead and get a loan without any prior approval of Parliament, then each and every one of our former Prime Ministers are guilty, including these ones that are sitting here watching me. So should we play the blame game? Mr. Honorable Speaker, this House and our people deserve a lot better, a lot more. This is why my contribution this afternoon is that someone, authorities as prescribed in Section 19, must take the reference recommendation seriously, instruct lawyers, including our own Solicitor General, to go to court now, file this afternoon or tomorrow, show that we are serious. The Solicitor General must now be instructed to commence recovery action. That doesn't need anyone to be blamed, or that doesn't need culpability. It just says that they were overpaid or unlawfully paid. And each and every one of the service providers, they should be also sued in this recovery action. And when we come back, there will be more commission of inquiries. We will be known as a country of commission of inquiries, because each and every one of us here are not serious. We have not awoken to the fact that we are killing our own country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lord Minister for State Enterprise.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. First, I want to commend the Prime Minister for taking the leadership to bring this, to set up the much-needed commission of inquiry, and to bring this report for Parliament for all of us to debate. It takes a strong Prime Minister to do such things like that in a country like PNG. I also want to place on record my respect and appreciation to the Chief Commissioner of this Commission of Inquiry, Sir Salmo Injia, and the Commissioner, the Honorable Margaret White, for what I see is a very thorough, well-researched and a very thorough Commission of Inquiry. It just demonstrates that this minor amount of money, of 30 million that we're talking about, compared to the billions we've lost with such an inquiry, Mr. Speaker. We've all read and we've heard and we've seen that our people through our government lost nearly $400 million on margin calls. Mr. Speaker, as you know, in margin calls depends upon the price of the oil at any one time. And during the contract period, when the price of the oil fluctuated on margin calls, we as a country lost badly to the tune of $400 million, according to the inquiry. According to the inquiry, we've also lost about 100 million kina, or dollars, by way of legal fees or consultant fees to the Union Bank of Switzerland. Mr. Speaker and fellow members, leaders, we all know for a fact that investing in an oil industry is a speculative industry. That is why many governments right across the world shy away from becoming investors and remaining investors in that speculative industry. So if our country wanted to borrow, it could have gone simply to the usual traditional financiers and borrowed money to fund infrastructure, health, education, law and order, for instance. And yet, we as a country and as a government decided to engage in the speculative industry by borrowing heavily, not from a traditional financer, but through UBS. And that is where we are now. So collectively as a country, it's a damning indictment of the leadership that we have here, led by the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister at that time, and all of us leaders at that time. If I can recall correctly, Mr. Speaker, in December 2013, when I was the Minister for Petroleum and Energy, I approved a sell down by Intoil for its 40% equity to Total for nearly $400 million. That was in December, and I approved the transaction under sections 99 and 100 of the Oil and Gas Act. So in the industry practice at that time, Mr. Speaker, that sale provided the basis and the template for valuing someone's interest in a particular oil field. Unfortunately,
2 months later, I had been decommissioned as a minister in February. So I was not part of the cabinet which approved this very important transaction in a matter of only hours for large-scale transaction from what the commissioners said. So in 2014, in February, when cabinet approved the UBS transaction, Oil States was able to receive $900 million and then was able to quickly buy 22.5% of PEG LNG's interest for $900 million. And Mr. Speaker, when I was Minister for Petroleum and Energy, I got to know Carlo Civelli, and I called him the Silver Fox because he had a lot of gray hair. He was said to be a multi-million-dollar businessman based in Switzerland. And we did not know who the beneficial shareholders of PEC LNG were, because the company, according to other sources, was registered in one of the tax havens. So God knows, Mr. Speaker, who were the beneficial shareholders of PEC LNG. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, that Carlos Civelli at that time became one of the world's smartest businessmen in the world by being able to make that kind of money for only a 22.5% interest in El Cantaloupe. One of the smartest businessmen, I say, only because we allowed him to. So, Mr. Speaker, all of this inquiry, our people's cries, the arguments we are raising, debating in this parliament, out of this, only 3 people know what really happened in this saga. Carlos Civelli, the former managing director of Oil States, Peter Bourton, and the member for Yellow Pangia. They know what happened. And I know Carlos Civelli.
The Minister for Public Enterprises is making reference to Carlo Civelli. This is a person that is a point of contention where I have stated in the inquiry that I've never met him in my life. But as I said, there are persons who say that I've met him in a bar somewhere. And this is where the Commission is now referring me to ICAC for further investigation. And I intend to defend that. But to make such reference where he himself does not have any evidence, the Minister, to effect that suggesting that there are schemes in place. Let's please, for argument's sake, debate on facts. I intend to test these references in court. That's my right, which I will do so. And they can produce evidence there that there are some scams and schemes going on. The inquiry has not stated anything to that fact, except there is suggestion that there may have been a meeting taking place. So, Mr. Speaker, can you please allow the Minister to ask the Minister to remain to facts? We are going to an election. I know the motives behind some of the comments. But please, let us base it on facts and evidence that is before us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The subject of this inquiry was based on civil and a balance of probabilities. We are not debating a criminal trial. I don't say that I have the evidence, but I'm making a speech based on the findings made by the inquiry. Mr. Speaker, if you were to look at page 33, the summary of the inquiry's report, one of the questions which is asked was, and I repeat, when was the decision made to purchase Oil States shares? The answer is the decision to purchase the Oil States shares was made on either 23rd February or 27 February 2014, before the NEC meeting on 6 March. So who was the Prime Minister that day? The buck stops with the Prime Minister. That was the same time, around the same time I was decommissioned as a minister, because the views I had expressed and I gave evidence to the inquiry. And it's all in the summary for all of you who want to read. Mr. Speaker.
We have another point of order.
I hate to disturb this, but the minister himself knows why I decommissioned him. That was in relation to the Manu Manu land. So stop just lying to Parliament. I suspended you because of that transaction while the inquiries were going on.
I'm very happy that the former Prime Minister come out lying again. If you can remember correctly, I was suspended in April 2017, not in February 2014 when I was decommissioned. I'm surprised his memory is failing him. My response and evidence to the Commission was always that, and that has never been contradicted by any witness, Mr. Speaker, and that is that after debating and passing the 2014 national budget in November 2013, the former Prime Minister asked me for lunch at the cafeteria, and I was one of the few privileged ministers who he confided. He in fact told me that he was intending to enter into this deal, and I advised against him. And that is the evidence I've given to the tribunal, or the inquiry. And Mr. Speaker, to put the record straight, I was asked to step aside in April 2017, notwithstanding that there were 4 NEC decisions which authorized and approved the very mano-mano deal that they're talking about. And for the Parliament's record, I have been cleared by 4 different inquiries: the police, the ombudsman, the administrative inquiry, and even the inquiry commissioned by the Prime Minister itself. And I have been cleared publicly, Mr. Speaker. So the former Prime Minister's argument that I was sacked because of Manu Manu is not true. That event happened in 2014, in February, when I was decommissioned. The Manu Manu allegations came up in 2017. Mr. Speaker, if you also go to another question, paragraph 33 or page 33 of the brief, the question the Commission asks is the rationale as to why the state determined to buy shares in oil states in 2014. The stated rationale was a so-called strategic interest in owning oil state shares, but the Commission does not accept it. The balance of the evidence suggests that a significant driver of the state's purchase of new oil states in 2014 was to assist in ensuring that PEC LNG group of companies were bought out of PRL 15. And again, PEC LNG features prominently in this inquiry. And that was why I said only 3 people know the answers to these questions. And Mr. Speaker, I echo the sentiments raised by the member for Kandep. The position of a Prime Minister in this country is so powerful. And they are saying that this needs to be looked at. Mr. Speaker, I beg to differ. It depends on who we elect as the Prime Minister. If you elect a honest, God-fearing leader, you do not need to water down his powers. So, Mr. Speaker, my argument is this. This transaction called for a matter of judgment. And the Prime Minister of the day at that time was in a position to determine where he was going to lead his country to, what his country was going to benefit, and whether there was a proper cost-benefit analysis being done for a project of that magnitude, a major transaction
where ideally you would need cabinet members to be given enough time to go through it, instead of being rushed into making a decision within a space of 1 hour. So this is a serious indictment of our leadership, starting from the Prime Minister at the time and all the others who were involved. I am not blaming the former Prime Minister solely, but we all fail in our duties. But to start with, as I said earlier, it's a serious indictment of the Prime Minister of the day. He caused a shot. So my brother and the member for Yalubanga has a lot to answer for this. The people of this country, through us, elect prime ministers, give them the blessings and the power to run this country for the betterment of our people. And we let them down and we start raising arguments and trying to defend ourselves, I don't think there's a place for that, but we must be careful in future. But all I can say to the member for Yalupanga is that he needs to learn from this and to make better decisions. He'll still be a player in politics in our country, but he needs to learn from this. It's a terrible mistake. It's a terrible mess we've created. And as the Prime Minister of the day, the buck stopped with him. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope and I wish to remind all of us that given that most of us will be returning, we must make it a point to see the recommendations of this inquiry being implemented. We have talked about most inquiries being kept in the cells and gathering dust, but those things happen in the past. We look to the future. We must make sure during our time the recommendations of this inquiry are implemented by the new government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Governor of Long Eastern Highlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving the opportunity to the people of Eastern Islands to raise to debate on this very important tabling of a commission of inquiry. Mr. Speaker, going through the report, as the young governor, new term, me feel awesome. By looking at all figures, how much big money me losing, all decisions me play working. Me wish Mr. Becklo, all play. Time you make some independence in the camp, all Papa blame me, all for fathers blame me. Lord, this time, little money also working plenty work. Only corruption in no can too much this time. Me wish Mr. Pin said, Lord, this time. Money kill him couple, not give him. Now you may fight law. Couple stop talk picks house him. And me no stop law this house, Mr. Speaker. Man kisim you may come law independence. Grand Chief Sam Michael Thomas Sumarek. And me kisim political independence come. Now like Karim you may go inside law economic independence and big law project been come up. Law time me Mr. Prime Minister law you may. Now me kiss him come inside. Now how you may cut him against people. Now how you may look out in people. You may abuse him, Mr. Speaker. Now Papua New Guinea losing big money. Now you may point him finger, he go come. Lord, this time plenty, Sira Namel lo Humi. All to stop inside. No got one play son up na to collectively me play resign. Because me play no one bello this decision. Mr. Speaker. Now, former Prime Minister Blo Yumi, member Blo Yalubu Pangia, and two by Tokol Sem, and collective decision, Blo government ya. Now I'm like trying to defend him lo court. Now I'm got long process is Mr. Speaker. Come back lo debate long, commission of inquiry. Loan was obtained, Mr. Speaker, for the purpose of financing the shares in the oil sales, foregoing the state direct involvement to serve the interest of few in the government during that time, or UBS, or staff in oil sets, those white-collar criminals. Some like interest block staff in display. Because all in working good, block best interest, block country. Mr. Speaker, the decision was bad. The process being abused and misused, decision makers being manipulated, government misled to make a decision which is bad for the country. At the expense of the hardworking people, our hardworking farmers, the business people, business companies or business communities, the taxpayers, at the expense of all these people. Few people, those who have privilege in the system of government to make decisions as suppressed and let down the very hardworking people of this nation. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that this is a bad decision because there is no evidence to say that we still have the money that we lost. No got one evidence lo sen query tokol sem money stop lo displahat. Big money you meet losing. That's why I'm saying that was a bad decision. We lost our shares, huge money, and where did it go? Who has it? Obviously not the government of Papua New Guinea. So, Mr. Speaker, suppose you mean all in this money, or money in a stop law country, or commission of inquiry in a Togo sem, money stop law one map. Na big money lose. Na imi arim minister law intergovernment relation. Emi talk only lo salim say only up in price. Or BIM says. All this like and contribution go inside lo this law. Only not talking me money stop away. So this is the highest degree of money laundering in the history of Papua New Guinea. Because money you mean no evidence you know so money stop away. Na big loss you mean make him. So that's money laundering. Money stop away one map. You need to find out. You got process no systems blow you stop, Mr. Speaker. Now, Attorney General, I believe, should start in this law process. Inside law country, now go outside law involving Napla sovereign nation. You got International Court of Justice system. You got ways law talk law justice system law Napla country or government law Napla country staff Attorney General. You must talk one time by starting this law process. Mr. Speaker, this picture now, you may debate, now you may talk, where Commission of Inquiry come to the table of Parliament now. Make a big question, law. Sovereignty, blow me, unsafe. Time you may working on financial decisions, where you may not consider best interest of country, the people. The question, blow you may, blow sovereignty, come into question. Unsafe. People governors no working decision, Mr. Speaker. Stop law executive government. People stop law province. Few only stop law executive government working decision. You must look law. Any economic decision or financial decisions involving big transactions, it will cost and it will affect the lives and future generations of Papua New Guinea. So how can we protect our country and our people if we continue this practice of corruption? So, Mr. Speaker, I won't say much about the inquiry, but I have suggestions on behalf of my people of Eastern Islands which I want to contribute. And that is, firstly, because many will cover themselves for corporate veil in companies or government using government as an executive or collective decision as a curtain to protect themselves by way of collective decision and to avoid prosecution. So allow the enforcement agencies, the Attorney General can start that by allowing the enforcement agencies and courts to deal with it. As I know, many of our leaders or many individuals have rights to defend them before the court for any prosecutions, appeal, and a lengthy process involved in that. So that process can go. They must start, we must start, instead of putting on a commission of inquiry, election to come. But this is very important that under this government, I'd like to commend our Prime Minister, Honorable James Marape, for presenting this, tabling this report, and to give credit to this government. Our Attorney General must start the process, the government agencies with prosecution to take place. And also, to quickly follow up, you may still miss out, countries still miss out. So how can we recover that bad decision? How can we recover all this plan? So we should quickly follow up with the shareholders, because people talk only the commission, only more stuff of Papua New Guinea. If we can follow up on this law. And if it is a public company, or let's put restraining order, long that time, when a transaction come up, only buy asset law on a map, only invest law on a map, then prosecution you go, Attorney General can assure him this Parliament that by only continue law, put him restraining order law on a asset only buy during that time. Now, stopping all of further disposal of those assets which or investment they made during that time. Now you must recoup him all this money he lost long. Now compensate him, people of Papua New Guinea. It's a big burden that now stop wanting people to beg him all this kind of money or loan you make him. People benefit na beg him about right. People no benefit big loss. Now you may like beg him this blah. No bad decisions. It's not right. So I'm suggesting we can follow up with that, start getting restraining order, put the bloggers during that time, all invest law on a map, like Simpec, something like Papua New Guinea. And that's what this government is doing under the leadership of Honorable James Marape, our Prime Minister, is to take back Papua New Guinea. This is the way forward to take back Papua New Guinea. Not only to prosecute, but take back what belongs, or asset or anything that belongs to Papua New Guinea. We must get it back through the process and systems that are already in place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member Bloaitape.
Speaker, long giving me this opportunity, long making a little contribution. Along this debate. Number one, talk me like Hamapi, mem long talk. Thank you, Prime Minister. Long setting up this inquiry and then following through by presenting its report today. We talk thank you too. Now recognize my efforts belong Chairman belong. Inquiries, Salomo India, one time Commissioner Margaret White, long come up in this big volume report, long UBS transaction. Mr. Speaker, you got two transactions, it come up long country in a long time. In 2009, under the Prime Ministership of Sir Michael, late Grand Chief Sir Michael Sumare, we undertook the IPIC exchangeable bond in order to borrow funding, in order to raise funding for us to participate as a country in the PNG LNG project, and which was completed with due process, with every law complied with. That was done under budget and ahead of, under the time schedule prescribed. Plenty time, plenty blow, your leaders always accuse him. National Alliance and his kitchen cabinet. Now, me and Mama also, as the remaining one of them, we made those tough decisions for the country, but we did follow the law to arrive and conclude these transactions in order for Papua New Guinea to benefit in the LNG project. Now, Mr. Speaker, revenue so far, also Governor Blomilong, he speak and me talk, The country has benefited around 12 billion kina already since 2014. Tamipla sipim first gas you go outside lo country Blayumi. That project to date is a success story for our country. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to commend the involvement of the then Prime Minister and member for Yalubu Pangia, who happens to be one of those ministers called Kitchen Cabinet. He knows exactly the tedious process it took for us to conclude the IP transaction. In fact, at many a times, he traveled overseas representing our country, particularly in marketing our gas. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, UBS loan did not follow the required process that we undertook for UBS. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, in those cabinet, I was a minister in the then government of Prime Minister O'Neill. Unfortunately, I was not involved in any of those cabinet meetings that for UBS transaction. I was not the treasurer then. It was through the concluding part of it that I came in as treasurer, and I rightly requested the then Prime Minister to handle the UBS transaction because I was not party to it and I have not much knowledge of that transaction. And that was how I described my involvement in the UBS inquiry. Mr. Speaker, in comparison with the value that the country has now in terms of both transactions, our country borrowed in total about 1.2 billion Australian dollars to participate in our 19.4% interest in LNG project that we have benefited, currently enjoying the benefits of it. Despite the fact that earlier on instructions were given to hold this money at an offshore account that deprived our citizens from benefiting from this project. Mr. Speaker, let me remind the House that from 2009 onwards, when we first came up with upfront benefit to the landowners of the wellheads, this country paid for it to the value of 1.2 billion kina. Mr. Speaker, this money was from your coffee, your cacao, your fisheries, your timber. You paid up front. When the gas is not being pumped out, the country made that commitment to the landowners to front load. The next government, under the Prime Ministership of Honorable Peter O'Neill, took a decision to prevent Papua New Guineans from enjoying the benefits of the proceeds by making sure that instructions was given to ensure that money is held overseas. Instead of LNG money by come inside and finance him budget blow you me. Long look long help him grow him economy, straight him road blow you me. Straight him house sick blow you me, put him more marasin, he go inside long house sick blow you me. Making sure that our children are educated properly with better infrastructures. We prevented the state from accessing these funds. We prevented the state from accessing these funds because we have undertaken a failed transaction Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, UBS is a failed transaction that this country has ever entered into. It is a failed transaction because the process was not followed. Mr. Speaker, it's a failed transaction because the laws of this country are not adhered to. Mr. Speaker, it is a failed transaction because Parliament was not involved. Then we run to departments of Treasury to try and concoct submission so that we can say that, oh, process me following. I agree with Member for Hagen and Minister for State Enterprises. Time you mean leader is in position on government. The buck stops with us. The buck must stop with us. Now time you mean like come up na kusai. You mean kusai long still. The law must be changed that you don't get another opportunity. You don't get another opportunity to mislead our people. You don't get another opportunity to do bad deals for our country. Time you Prime Minister or you Minister of Finance or you Treasurer. Does citizens of this country expect a high conduct from you? A high conduct from individual leaders. That's why people talk leader now. You may go every 5 years, look at him, fresh mandate blow, line blow, you mean. Now you must show him also that mandate is a value to our citizens because every 5 years they get the opportunity to cast their votes. But suppose he come now, walk him, same mistake. Same mistake. Mr. Speaker, since 2014 he come 2017, our economy was growing downwards. There's no growth rate. There's almost to a negative growth rate in this country. There's no expansion in the economy. Now time you look at me, look at investment. Now di now blow you me. Di now blow you me. It's going skyrocketing. Skyrocketing. And I must say that I was the treasurer and the National Alliance led government. We left 600 million in the bank. 600 million surplus in the bank. Time Nupla government he come inside. When he left the office, he left this country with 20 billion in debt. He left this country 20 million in red. Time you me finish by you me second, this la government blow you me tete. How much money me play stable surplus or me play stable debt? But it's a fact, Mr. Speaker. It's a fact. Time you walk him or kusai talk nam, cut him or legal deal blow you me. We have to be worried about our country where we are trekking. We are not a small island on our own. We're a sovereign nation. And the nation prospers when leadership maintains that confidence. Not about listen confidence, Mr. Speaker. Plan the kind, old still man by come inside the country blow me like what he did under the UBS transaction. So me, sanaplong. Talk clear long or leaders blow you me, na country blow you me also. These two transactions, under the IPIC transaction, plenty blue got two ting also, we got deal, and the government they walk him. Yes, people walk him deal, and people conclude him. There's a transaction, LNG project, and miss up. Now me employ him plan deal, young problem country blue you me. It's one of the biggest employer in our country, and it is one of the bigger revenue earner for our country. Now, Mr. Speaker, meeting all Sam, my personal view is that when we started paying for this LNG project, we paid it out from Waigani consolidated revenue. Now, about time, must frame this money come long Waigani public accounts. Because on the one hand, we are talking about being in debt. Yet, there are some state entities that are enjoying luxuriously with the proceeds of LNG project. Why can't this money be transferred into treasury so the treasurer can stop borrowing? Now use him the money to help him contribute, you mean? Why? We are a government, we can change that. It's only a procedural thing that we need to do. Instead of making petroleum warehousing, receiving revenue, long LNG, you may talk also, why can it consolidate account? You come up, one block is revenue and redistribute it through the budgetary process on an annual basis. That was NA government's thinking then. Then we created the Sovereign World Fund. So excess money, you may put him time, you know what drain? Country can move, but he got drain, I may need him assistance, the funding budget. You call on the Sovereign World Fund to come in and assist. And Commission of Inquiry has made it eloquently clear that let's go down and exercise that option. So why you me holim na kirapim? One black and state company where it is racing again private sector to carry out exploration now, working kind something also. We need that money badly to fix our bridges, to make sure our schools are run properly with sufficient infrastructure and all that, our roads and bridges. Now, look long, all welfare block country, all citizens blame you me. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope that this inquiry is now making it abundantly clear that there are two transactions, and one is very successful. The other one has no value to our country because original intention, Blombaimbeck also says, we come up but at a loss to our country, and we ended up borrowing money and then losing money in the end. So, me thank him, Prime Minister. Lo you come up in this commission of inquiry, and me work him recommendation is stop. Prime Minister, me recommend him strongly. Also, you as Prime Minister of our country, you must now start talking to your colleague in Australia, ask him support so that we can undertake this prosecution, involve him, all individuals and law firms and business firms in Australia, including UBS. Suppose only Brooklyn law. We want to make sure, and my final statement to the Commission of Inquiry is that the state must use all its means to recover the money lost through this transaction. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Petroleum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All brother working planning good plat talk penis me like just working short observation that's all. Number one, also you may lose more than 3 billion kina. 3 billion kina. So suppose I need him 30 million kina, or try to illustrate him display wrong, then there is every reason to do that. And completely justified. Suppose you start money kirap na talk, why not you spend him 30 million kina? This is the money got 1% in lighting. Suppose further action him needing narbla 30 million kina, you must ready law spend him this money. Because Nipla like show him, we want to put our foot down to demonstrate that Papua New Guinea now refuses to be a soft target anymore for international criminals and their cohorts inside this country who facilitate and enable them. That we will no longer stand up to such practices, schemes and scams. I thank the Prime Minister for initiating this inquiry because it was a very important matter of public interest. It's a matter that concerned a payment of 3 billion kina, out of which you gain nothing out of. After paying 3 billion kina, what did you get in your hand for it? To show that you gave 3 billion kina and you got this thing for it. Where is that thing? Nothing. We just paid that money for nothing. Now we are needing 10 million kina per district in all our districts to develop our bring much needed development to our district, and that 3 billion kina is not available to us. That's what we are complaining about. We need to build the roads and bridges and the schools and the classrooms and the aid posts and medical orderlies houses and all these things. Keep the roads maintenance up to date. The Little Wolves built, and we can't do that because all of a sudden somebody gifted 3 billion kina away. For what consideration? Papua New Guinea get nothing, perhaps some other consideration given that is not disclosed and not is presently known. We need to look further. So I do not think that any argument about the cost of taking up this follow-up action should be an issue to anybody. So thank you very much to the Prime Minister for initiating the Commission of Inquiry, all the commissioners for carrying out a very, very difficult and onerous task of unveiling all the facts and simplifying it for us in this report here. And now we will be able to work out the story in a proper sequence and work out exactly what we need to do. And that brings about, Mr. Speaker, what do we do next? I feel, and I recommend to this Parliament and for the Prime Minister, that we should establish a very strong task force, to take all the consequential actions and the recommendations that had been identified in this report. Now, composition of the task force is important. My experience demonstrates that when you draw public servants in from their various departments, there's usually a tug of war between their department and the new task here. This task is so important that we cannot afford to have any officer tasked to that office to be a member of that task force to be distracted by their normal day-to-day public service responsibilities. So this has got to be a completely standalone task force and given all the financial assistance necessary to take all the consequential actions and give effect to all the recommendations that are contained in the report. That is important. If we didn't have such a dedicated task, then this report and all its recommendations will collect dust like all the other previous inquiries, like Barnett inquiry, the Superfund inquiry, the SABL inquiry, and every other inquiry that goes before it. We spend a lot of money, but do not take the follow-up actions, and therefore the practice continues unabated, same speed all the time. In that follow-up action, Mr. Speaker, I feel that our actions must not be contained within this country alone. The major players are overseas. We must chase them all the way. All those major law firms out of Australia who were involved must be brought to account. They have a law society which manages their professional conduct issues. This report should be submitted to them, and they must be brought to account under their professional conduct rules in Australia. Banks, whether they're in Papua New Guinea, in Australia or in Switzerland, are also subject to the same fit and proper test requirements. You have to be a fit and proper person to be able to hold a banking license. Because of the manner in which the UBS bank has behaved, here, out of Australia and Switzerland, I don't believe that by any definition they qualify to continue to hold a banking license because they cannot be classified as a fit and proper person. By its true definition, we have to submit this report to the Australian office of UBS. We have to also submit this report to UBS, to the government of Switzerland, to be referred to the appropriate authorities in Switzerland so that they take the appropriate action insofar as UBS conduct is concerned. It was a reckless loan. The securities were not properly written down to protect the interests of the borrower, being the people of this country. It was written in such a way that the default that they had anticipated happen in short order, and it did happen as they envisaged. So we lost everything. Their conduct cannot remain, their conduct has to be pursued all the way to the study of whether they are fit and proper to hold a banking license to lend locally in Switzerland or internationally everywhere, including Papua New Guinea through Australia. That's very important. So our actions must be right across the, wherever the players come from. We must chase them and be prepared to spend our money to make a statement to the global community that Papua New Guinea has grown up and will no longer accept international bandits coming through our country and robbing and plundering at will, and we must stay pleased. Mr. Speaker, so my emphasis is on the task force. Follow-up action is critical, and I recommend it to the Parliament. Thank you.
Very good. The question is that the question be now put. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. I move that the report and its recommendations be adopted. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move.
Mr. Clark.
Notices. The Prime Minister and Minister for Bougainville Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the Goods and Services Tax Act 2003. The Prime Minister and Minister for Bougainville Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill to amend the Income Tax Act 1959. The Prime Minister and Minister for Bougainville Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill to amend the Mining Act 1992. The Prime Minister and Minister for Bougainville Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the Motor Vehicles Third-Party Insurance Act, Chapter 295. The Prime Minister and Minister for Bougainville Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the National Energy Authority Act 2021. The Prime Minister and Minister for Bougainville Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the Resource Contracts Fiscal Stabilization Act 2000. The Prime Minister and Minister for Bougainville Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the Stamp Duties Act, Chapter 117. The Minister for Provincial and Local Level Government Affairs gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the Local Level Governments Administration Act 1997. The Minister for Police gives notice that he shall present a bill for an act to amend the Firearms Act, Chapter 310, and for related purposes.
Leader of Government Business.
Parliament to move a motion without notice.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent Minister for Provincial and Local Level Government Affairs presenting the Local Level Government Administration Amendment Bill 2022. Government business being called forthwith.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Mr. Clark.
Local Level Government Administration Amendment Bill 2020. Minister for Provincial and Local Level Government Affairs.
Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I present the Local Level Government Administration Amendment Bill 2022.
Mr. Clerk.
Bill for an Act to amend the Local Level Governments Administration Act 1997.
Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move the second reading forthwith.
Is leave granted? Leave granted. Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be now read a second time.
Make your speech.
Mr. Speaker and members of this Honorable House, it is with great pleasure that I take this opportunity accorded to me to introduce in today's Parliament sitting the Local Level Governments Administration Amendment Bill 22. Mr. Speaker, the Local Level Governments Administration Act 1997 implements the organic law on provincial governments and local level governments, making provisions for a system of local level government, including their administration. Mr. Speaker, the Local Level Government Administration Amendment Bill 2022 that is being introduced for tabling in this Honorable House intends to amend the Principal Act with a primary amendment made to Section 1, Section 14 of the Principal Act. The amendment is to 1, clarify the qualification required for a person to be or remain a member of the local level government, and 2, ensuring consistency and fairness in the election to public offices, in this case LLGs, and 3, ensure uniformity from the national and provincial level to the LLGs regarding vocation of office relating to contesting the national general elections. Mr. Speaker, the amendments are minor yet essential for purposes of removing any ambiguity and gives proper effect to the organic law on provincial governments and local level governments, especially the administrative aspect of the LLG system. Mr. Speaker, under the organic law on provincial governments and local level governments, there was an intention for specific qualifications and disqualifications for members of LLGs to be elaborated in the Act of Parliament. However, these specifications were missing. Furthermore, this created a grey area in terms of members holding elective offices in either the provincial or local level governments while contesting the national elections. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, a court determined in the law that the minister had no authority or power to invoke Section 9 and 10 of the Local Level Administration Act 1997 to dismiss the head of local level governments and ward members from holding elective office if they intend to contest the 2022 national elections. Mr. Speaker, as such, this legislative reform was initiated by the Department of Provincial and Local Level Government Affairs with assistance from the Department of Justice and Attorney General to assist in rectifying this issue, which was to prevent a member from representing two electorates, two governments at the same time. The policy rationale for the amendments is intended to ensure consistency and fairness in the election to public office, in this case, LLGs. The amendment also provides for the vocation of office for both elected and appointed members of the LLGs on the same, thereby giving proper effect to the organic law. Mr. Speaker, with that, I commend the Local Level Government Administration Amendment Bill 22 to this Honorable House. Thank you.
The question is that the question be now put. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that the bill be now read a second time. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Mr. Clerk.
Second reading, a bill for an act to amend the Local Level Governments Administration Act 1997.
Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move the third reading forthwith.
Is leave granted? Leave granted, Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be now read at that time.
The question is that the question be now put. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The question is that the bill be now read a third time. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Mr. Clerk.
Third reading, a bill for an act to amend the Local Level Governments Administration Act 1997.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, may I thank you, Lord. As always, my duty as Leader of Government Business to thank him or members you may sit through this house. This afternoon meeting was some chamber come up with some courthouse, New Zealand or some judge time to debate him. Very important paper that came to this house. Mr. Speaker, while you making more debate, before me moving my judgment, Mr. Speaker, I'd like just to add one comment, recognizing all the gentlemen that spoke in this house, few senior leaders, members on this side, members on the other side. Mr. Speaker, me like this talk with him. While we debate on this floor, some of the time you must conscious law. One of something well, months of watching the TV. Our country looking at me. Mr. Speaker, sometimes I wish we had a pay system where every time if you lie and everything is captured and then said on the previous things you said, automatically I'm going to go off. So the Speaker will go off telling you that you have lied against some of the things you said. Then we can know we lied on the floor. Or every time a coin drops in this house, every time we lie or we make misleading statements, if one kina drops from this roof, I think we'll be one of the most richest parliaments in the world. Prime Minister, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, time you talk, meeting with him, you must also conscious of what we say and how we portray me as leaders. One thing is to describe me, crossing me, cross-pied leader, but it's another thing to set an example for incoming leaders in the future as well. That's just a caution, the meeting with him. Mr. Speaker, I must share with me line this house. What the Mr. Speaker, I move with him, I join Parliament go tomorrow, 10 a.m. Thank you.
Question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Honourable members, Parliament is now adjourned to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.